DoomEternal's ultranightmare is among some of the hardest achievements in all of gaming. Nightmare on its own is a very hard difficulty for DoomEternal, and adding in permadeath for a campaign that can take you 4 or 5 hours is a monumental task. So with Dark Ages around the corner, I thought there was no better time than the present to help people get their last minute ultranightmare clears. However, unlike my 2016 guide, this one is actually going to have a little bit of additional information at the start as just general guidelines for playing on the hardest difficulty. If you're already pretty good at the game and mostly looking for a route and to understanding combat encounters specifically better, then you could just skip this part. But if you don't consider yourself to be super good at DoomEternal, you'll probably learn a lot of cool stuff from this. Also, in the background while I'm talking about this, you're mostly going to see master level gameplay. I mostly did this because I'm very familiar with all the spawns in the regular campaign, and I think the master level kind of just shows off the techniques that I'm trying to show off even better than you could see in the regular game. So first things first, the bread and butter of this game, we're going to talk about general movement. Most of the scary parts of this game are spent in relatively large arenas that are just filled to the brim with enemies that are trying to take you down. So being able to get around the arenas very efficiently and understanding how to keep the enemies shooting you less as much as you can are great ways to increase your survivability just overall. The first thing you'll see is anytime you're in a situation where you have a large number of enemies that you can't just take down in a couple of seconds, the backup strat is always to just go around in wide circles around the arena, picking off at enemies as you can, and using the fodder to stack up on any resources you need like armor, health, and ammo. The other big point is to take advantage of verticality. You see me kind of switching back and forth between going on the top level and the bottom level. In general, it's better to be higher up at all times in this game, but a very helpful thing you can do is try to get enemies stuck in ledge grab animations. Similar to whenever you're doing a ledge grab animation, enemies also spend a lot of time changing elevations. Jumping up and down from platforms means that they're not shooting at you and then they're instead trying to get to you. Making use of the meat hook and the ballista once you unlock it is extremely helpful for getting around, as well as utilizing the jump pads available in every fight throughout the game pretty much. Remember, the meat hook enables you to do a high jump. All you have to do is use up both of your jumps, meat hook an enemy, jump again, and you get a super high jump. While you're up in the air like this, most enemies have a harder time hitting you, and you can just rain down damage from above with relative safety. If you're not able to do weapon combos while also looking around and pressing your jump key, feel free to instead just go for something like a lock-on burst on any of the heavies that you find the most threatening. Meat hook into lock-on burst is a very friendly way of taking down almost anything, even if you're on something like controller where it's harder to manage all those inputs. Remember, you can also make use of the ballista. Whenever you're in the air and you are pressing backwards and you fire the weapon, you'll get a bunch of backward speed, and it's as simple as turning around to convert that all into forward speed, which allows you to get around the arena much more quickly. You can also utilize the meat hook by strafing while you have an enemy hooked with it, and you'll get a ton of horizontal speed, more depending on your frame rate, but you'll get a lot no matter what. Another thing to note is if you meat hook an enemy and then switch weapons while you're meat hooking towards them, you'll maintain all of the speed you had in the meat hook, and it will let you get a nice hop through them, especially if you kill the enemy. But that's most of the movement stuff, so now I want to talk about how you should actually be firing your weapons, because DoomEternal is a very weapon swap focused game. While you definitely don't have to weapon swap the majority of the enemies, it certainly helps out with your DPS, especially against some of the more tanky enemies like the Barons and Tyrants. The number one weapon to get familiar with is going to be the Precision Bolt because it's used in literally every single good weapon rotation in the game. A lot of people's first combo is using the Ballista and the SSG, but it's actually better to do the PB and the SSG or the PB and the Ballista depending on the circumstance instead. You can also of course use the PB and the Rocket as another great longer range option, and that's actually your first weapon combo that you really have full access to. If you haven't used the PB in combos before, just spend like 10 minutes practicing shooting the PB in combos because you do have to time the mod button and fire button with the swaps properly. And I do show this off in the run, mostly in the form of SLOBs and Yeet blasting in the early game. Yeet blasting is a pretty simple tech. Basically all you have to do is have heat blast charged up some, start firing the weapon normally, then switch off of the weapon and press heat blast as soon as you press the swap weapon key, but after you've pressed it. If you do it correctly, you'll get a bunch of heat blasts during the duration of the weapon swap animation. This is used in the early game before you get Quick Swapper, because having Quick Swapper actually nerfs this technique, but it's super helpful in levels like Exultia, which are also some of these scarier levels as well. Beyond that, there are SLOBs, which are useful throughout the entire game, and are especially useful against Marauders as they are one of the only ways to take them out instantly. SLOBs also have ridiculous amounts of burst DPS, so I'll show you quickly how to do those if you're interested, but they do take a little bit of practice getting used to. Basically, the setup is that you fire off a PB shot, you switch to the rocket, you fire a regular rocket, and then immediately do a lock-on burst. If you do the combo fast enough, you'll notice that the lock-on burst is extremely fast, you're able to fire subsequent lock-on bursts very quickly, and the lock-on burst also has extremely aggressive tracking. When I was first trying it, I wasn't sure if I was getting it, and that was because I wasn't getting it. It's very noticeable when you do get it, so just practice it on enemies like Tyrants early on, and eventually you'll be able to do it to almost anything, even Marauders. On the topic of Marauders, I do want to quickly talk about them because they can be a pain point for some people who aren't too familiar with them. Marauders have a couple of really cool techs involved with taking them down easier, so I'm just going to explain those to you. The first one is, like I said, the SLOB, which allows you to fire off 2 full lock-on bursts during a single stun, which will instantly kill them. If you're not able to hit SLOBs on Marauders consistently, the backup is to use PB SSG combos. Basically, in a single stun phase, you can do 2 PBs and 2 SSGs staggered back and forth with each other, and if you are barrel stuffing him with the SSG shots while he's stunned, you'll actually get a 2 cycle on them, but if not, you'll get him very close and you'll have a very fast 3rd cycle. However, if you do mess that up, you tend to be able to do a trick called Foot Ballista, and the Foot Ballista is a trick that allows you to stun the Marauder at any time as long as he has the right health values. We're not sure exactly what those health values are specifically, but basically if the Marauder is missing a bunch of health, but also not too much health, you could shoot the Ballista on the ground next to him and he will just always stagger for whatever reason. This is a strat that should be used to speed up Marauder fights rather than be relied upon for safety, since it's hard to tell whether or not the Foot Ballista will actually work. But it's a great thing that you can very frequently do if you mess up the 2 cycle using PBSSGs or only hit a single SLOB instead of both of the lock-on bursts together. And the last thing I want to do is actually play you guys a clip where I'm going to be talking about panic. When things start going wrong in this game, they go really wrong, and a lot of people's reaction is to try to play the game faster than they're able to. This leads to them just mashing buttons. Oftentimes it'll cause you to fumble your swaps and just not shoot your weapons at all. And the easiest way you can avoid this is to just stop, pause the game, and think about what you want to do, and then try to execute it. If you spend too much time there, so that's something to bear in mind. Also, I just got trolled, I didn't reset my dashes. Hold on. Okay, so I'm in a bad situation, right? The Kako didn't die, I'm missing a bunch of health, and there's an Arachnotron in my face. So I know I have a triple chainsaw. I know that I have a Kako demon that is on my right side. So what can I do? I think instead of panicking and dying, I'm going to chainsaw the Arachnotron because I'm within lunge distance of him. And then I'm going to turn and feed the Kako a grenade. That's my plan. Let's see if it works. Grab the health. Check for fodder. Get the glory kill. There we go. Pop his turret so that we're not dealing with that shit. I messed it up. And now we're going to grab this health and we're going to charge up another heat blast. Also, I apologize for the terrible quality. I actually intended to do a live commentary on that run for this guide, but unfortunately I forgot to hit the record button, so all I have is that terrible quality VOD that has a bunch of lags in it, and I didn't want to use that in a video, so we're doing this instead. However, I did just want to show off the clip because I think it was a great clip to showcase how you should handle panic. Anyway, that was the last main thing I wanted to talk about, so let's go ahead and get into the actual walkthrough, going through all of the combat encounters and setting up your route throughout the game. So this is the first real combat of the game, and it's a pretty easy one. In the early game, because we have such little health and no way to regenerate our armor ourselves, you end up going into the low health state a lot, but it's pretty easy to just recover your health quickly since all the enemies are one-shottable. In Hell on Earth, we're going to be chainsawing as many Arachnotrons as possible using all of the fuel pips, so as long as you're planning those out properly, you shouldn't have any trouble with this level really, and I'm just going to gloss over all the combat. For this room, you just have to take out 17 imps and soldiers, and then the combat will be done. Since it's not too difficult, I'm just going to talk about the run a little bit broadly now. For this route, we're going to be doing a minimal run of the game, meaning we're going to be getting as many upgrades as we can in the early game, and then backing off on that later once we don't need them anymore. But since naturally this game is just harder in the early game because you have less upgrades, we go after them early on. That being said, there's not a lot of upgrades available in the first level, so we end up skipping past a lot of it. This fight can be skipped easily if you're familiar with the speedrun just using a punch boost, but just for anybody not up to that, I'm just going to show the combat since it's not hard either way. Basically, we held onto our chainsaw in the last fight so that we can use it on the Arachnotron here, and then you just need to run around and finish off the rest of these soldiers and imps. It's a very easy fight, and you have a lot of verticality to take advantage of. One thing you'll see throughout the entire run is I'm going to be showing off some of the easier speedrun tricks for people to do. So there will be things like specific ballista boosts that you can do as long as I think they're easy enough, or certain setups in combat to spawn trap some enemies to make them easier to deal with. When you're leaving that last fight, make sure you've let your first fuel regenerate naturally, and then pick up the fuel in that room, and then the one in this area on the next fight, and this will allow you to chainsaw yet another Arachnotron right here. You'll also see I fire a sticky next to him because an imp spawns on top of him every time, and you don't want to accidentally chainsaw him. From there, you can just hit stickies on all of the soldiers, and we'll be able to open up the force field. I'm not sure if the ones back here actually matter, but these ones contribute to the force field. You actually don't have to kill all the enemies, but you might as well do it just for safety, and it doesn't take too long anyway. Once you take them out, you can go and grab the yellow keycard, and then we can move on to the next part. So this is the subway, and this is the first part that we elect to just run through. There's an Arachnotron in here, and we don't have a chainsaw for him, but since this entire area is completely optional, it's easier to just run through it. You'll see that I am just kind of bunny hopping, but I'm not actually doing the bunny hopping tap to gain speed, I'm just jumping repeatedly. At this point, we're picking a Precision Bolt. It's a very strong mod, and you absolutely need to have it for the rest of the run. If you're at all experienced with the game, then you'll probably know that the Precision Bolt is the best gun in the game by far. Now in this fight, you can delay the Kako spawning until you've taken out these two imps if you want to be safe, but as a speedrunner, I'm kind of used to just spawning everything in as quick as I can and killing it anyway, but the spawn trigger for that Kako is based on when you get close. From there, you want to just start killing all the enemies you can off of their spawn. A lot of them spawn to that area down below to the right of the Kako. However, the spawns are random, so they'll look different for you every time you're doing it. At this point, you can actually sit back up here and pick off all the enemies. However, it's not that dangerous of a room. You can also just get up in their face and take them down as well. The main thing is to just be ready for the Arachnotron and pop off his turret before he can do too much damage to you. From there, you could just drop stickies on him, and while that's on cooldown, fire a PB, and just go back and forth until he goes down. And don't forget about the frag launcher on your shoulder, which lets you fire a frag grenade that will always stagger any demon. Also, don't forget to grab the fuel pip in there. After that, we're moving on to the next combat. I like to feed this guy a grenade so that he doesn't shoot me on my way up, and then we can hop up into the next fight. For this one, you start off just by taking out these guys who are close, then I recommend sniping the soldier up top, and picking off any fodder you can until the Kako demon starts closing in on you. You do want to take out all the fodder you can in this early part, because it'll make sure you're set up properly for the second half of the fight. But basically, the Kakos will funnel into this spot if you're sitting back here every time, so it makes it a pretty safe way to deal with them. Once you've gotten them both, an Arachnotron is going to start spawning, so we're going to run over this fuel to grab it, and hit him with a triple chainsaw. At this point, you can start killing all the fodder, but they're going to keep respawning until you kill this Kako, so I like to just kill one of the imps, and then deal with them afterwards, and this minimizes the number of imps that spawn. Once you're done, you can grab the armor, including the Sentinel armor in the elevator if you already picked this up, and now we can handle this fight. I like to snipe the guy in the back because sometimes he'll run away, but in this case, a lot of them ended up bunching up and being a really nice just splash target for me, and most of them got killed by that. You could take this fight from back here from high up, or you can push in more aggressively if you prefer, it's kind of up to you. But once you take out most of the enemies in this area, you're going to have those two guys spawn, and I recommend chainsawing one of them before moving on to the second half of the fight on the other side of this little tunnel. Once you take care of this guy, we can head into the other side that has an Arachnotron and some more fodder, and I recommend just prioritizing whatever's going to shoot you first. In my case, it was these fodders who were right in front of me, then from there I wanted to hit the turret off of the spider. After that, with the spider now weak, I was ready to finish off the rest of the fodder before focusing him down last. And you could see I toss a frag on him because it's a very nice bit of damage in this early game where we don't have a lot of weapons yet. Then it's just these two, and that's the end of the level. So now we're back in the fortress, and I'll just talk about the route a little bit. Basically, when it comes to the Sentinel crystals, we're going to be taking one of the ammo upgrades in the next level just so that we have one early ammo upgrade because it's very helpful. But then we're going to be saving the rest for BFG ammo refills in the late game. In general, you'll also see that the fights are more choreographed in the beginning parts of the game rather than the late parts, simply because you kind of need these setups in the early game to make them easier, whereas in the late game with all the tools at your disposal, it's not that hard to just kind of freehand everything down. That said, I will still be showing you guys all the demons that spawn, which is definitely the most important information to have. Getting into this initial fight on Exultia, it's not too hard of one, but we do have a Kako demon to watch out for, so pretty much you just watch where the spawns come from. They're static, so you'll always know where they are. Then, while the Kako's in the animation of eating the grenades, you can finish off the rest of the fodder, but in this case I messed it up and decided to take out the Kako before letting him get back up and hit me, and then I went and finished off the fodder that I missed from earlier. That said, if you do this all cleanly, all the fodder will be dead by the time you're ready to glory kill the Kako. Now, you'll notice that I did hold onto my frag grenade, and that is just to help us run past the Hell Knight here. If you are able to hit lurch hops and just get a bunch of speed, you could just go past him like that, but if you're not doing that, then you'll want to use the frag to stagger him out of his attack, that way he doesn't whack you while you're running away. Then we can go ahead and pick up the air control rune because it's literally the best one in the game by far. and head into the next combat arena, where we will immediately make use of that air control. So with this one, basically you want to just pick off 3 of these soldiers before dealing with the Hell Knight. If you can get them fast enough, you won't have to deal with them and you'll be able to kind of spawn trap the Hell Knight some. And in here, I recommend using a blood punch on him. You just want to be careful that you don't have a barrel next to you, or else that could blow up and kill you. You'll also see that I'm hitting some blue headshots with the stickies, and this is called a sticky crit, which does a ton of damage in the early game, so I recommend aiming for the head with the stickies on the shotgun. You can also just hit him normally and then flame belch him, and that will turn these stickies into crits, so bear that in mind as well. That's why I used the flame belch on him. Coming into this fight, basically you can actually sit back after taking out the first Kako and pick off all the fodder before coming in, but I decided to just hop in on accident and ended up not being able to leave, so I just took the fight fully like this. You can see it's still not that bad though. Once you take out that second Kako after the one that's outside on the bridge, another one's going to spawn, so just bear that in mind, and once you take him out, then an Arachnotron is going to spawn. You'll also see that setup I did with these sticky bombs. You could do that if you want to go a little bit faster, but there's not really any safety issues if you're not up to it. Basically, it's just 2 imps coming through that big door back there. So you may notice that I am skipping around a lot with the editing, and that's because if you're doing an Ultra Nightmare clear, I kind of expect that you know the basics of the game already anyway. And so I'm not showing you guys the super basic stuff that you need, like going and grabbing the dash. Obviously, you should be able to do that yourself. If you are coming into this without ever having done any Nightmare before, then I recommend just running regular Nightmare a couple of times and setting up your route that you want to use in Ultra Nightmare while you're doing so. Of course, you could just copy this one and it'll get you pretty far as well. Once you come into this room, you can hard rush that Hell Knight on the box and take him out before he's able to move, which is going to spawn that Kako, which you can then feed a grenade to deal with. You'll see then I come back and grab the fuel in here. It's important that you don't grab the fuel initially after you chainsaw the Arachnotron the first time you were in this fight, because we want to have 2 chainsaws leaving this area and heading into hell. But first we'll take a little detour and do the secret mission over here. And the cool strat with this is to just dash off the edge immediately after starting it, then you spawn behind the Kakos and can feed them both grenades really quickly. I think this is safer than just doing it the intended way where you wait for them to come to you. And you could say even though it went kind of wrong for me, this still just isn't a hard fight at all. So it's basically a free weapon point, and then we can move into the hell side. So once we go through the portal, you'll be given the plasma rifle and have some enemies to take out. If you sit back here at the top of the stairs, the Revenant won't spawn in until you walk up, so you could take out all of these fodder and do a one-on-one with the Revenant, who spawns on top of a barrel and gets kind of wrecked. But if you want to go fast, you can just push up and deal with everything at once as well. So I like to just toss a frag here and then try to hit a sticky crit or 2, and this guy goes down no problem. Now once we walk up, we're going to have a Hell Knight spawn, and I like to hit a sticky bomb on the barrel back there to take out that fodder before I do it, and then I turn and deal with the Kako Demon. At this point, I want to start taking out fodder because they're still pretty scary without a lot of health upgrades. So I'm looking for like the imps, the soldiers, the gargoyles, because they can do a ridiculous amount of damage to you, especially in the early game. So even though I didn't kill the Kako immediately, I was able to just give him a second grenade, which actually sets him up to be able to be insta-killed with just a sniper shot while he's in the stun animation. So it's kind of a nice way to take care of them when you're trying to deal with other enemies. And with this part done, I'll show you guys a little skip you can do here that everybody can do. All you have to do is regular jump, double dash, and then double jump, and you can make it onto that climbable wall and hop towards over here and grab the Heat Blast. Heat Blast is very nice in the early game because it's one of the few forms of real burst damage that we have. And we also have a special trick called Yeet Blasting that I talked about in the intro part. If you didn't watch that part, I recommend watching it to get the full instructions. But basically all you have to do is swap weapons and fire the mod at the right time, and it's going to let you fire off a bunch of Heat Blasts at the same time. So don't forget to grab the fuel here as a second pip, and we can get into the next fight. So while you were doing the silly puzzle back there, I recommend charging up a full Heat Blast so that we can use it in this fight, as this is probably the first difficult fight of the game. Pretty much we have an Arachnotron and a Revenant down here. I recommend just taking out the Revenant with your frags and your PB. Then we're going to hit a Yeet Blast on this Revenant here. At this point, a Hell Knight and then later a Kako and a bunch of fodder are going to start spawning, so you'll want to take care of them. You can grab the fuel sooner and chainsaw this Hell Knight if you're scared of him, but I like to save that for an Arachnotron a little bit later. Just bear in mind that once you have the Hell Knight's health like halfway down, this Kako is going to spawn, so if you're not set up to kill the Hell Knight really quickly, then just be aware of that guy and maybe change up your priorities. This spot is a relative safe spot of the arena. Obviously there are no perfect safe spots in this game for the most part, but it's a decent spot where there's only 2 ways for the demons to get to you. At this point I've chainsawed one of the Arachnotrons and a second one has just spawned, and now I'm getting a Heat Blast ready to hit him with another Yeet Blast. With him down, that's the last heavy, and now all I have are some fodders to deal with. You can see that my health got pretty low, but that's pretty common in the early game just because we're lacking in upgrades. But fortunately we are able to get our health back relatively easily and avoid a lot of the shots because the fights still aren't too hectic yet. That said, if you end up in a panic situation, remember, pause the game, figure out what to do, and make a good decision instead of getting yourself killed by freaking out. Once we're done with there, we have a little bit of intermittent combat. There's a spider here, and you can just take him down if you want to, or just run past him if you're quick enough. You can actually jump off that little, I don't know, meat tree there, and climb up instead of taking the intended parkour. Also, I'm not sure what exactly causes it, but sometimes this Kako spawns and sometimes he doesn't, so just be ready for him in case he does. After that, we're going to go towards the next secret encounter of the level, because once again, this one's pretty easy and it's kind of just a free weapon point. I like to take the opportunity to charge up my heat blast a little bit, because we're going to be using it again in the next big fight. This area is a pretty small one, but I'll still talk about it. Basically, you can just take these guys out, and then you could sit back here and pick off the 2 soldiers. The rest of the fight won't progress until you move up, so you could take your time with them and then move on. Once you hop up here, you'll want to go to the left and deal with the 2 imps that spawn, and as long as you're fast enough, you'll be ready for the zombies to come out with this frag grenade, and then feed this Kako a sticky bomb. You can see that the zombies didn't even show up on my screen, but they were crawling out of the ground, and will be there if you don't throw a frag there. Once you take out the Kako, you just have these 2 zombie guys to take care of, and we can move on. This area is kind of weird. There is a spider here, and you can climb up onto these rocks if you hit a good jump, but you can see I failed it, so now I'm doing the backup for if you can't hit the jump, which is basically to back off and get back here, so that way you have your movement again. Fighting from the purple goop is a big no-no in Nightmare because this game is all about movement. And here's the jump that you're trying to make if you can do it properly. Anyway, from here, once you've finished off all the enemies, we can head into the cave here, and I'll just show you guys a little skip to run past some of the parkour here, so you don't have to deal with punching the cube if you like. Do bear in mind that you still have to walk through the cave because there's actually an invisible wall over this that you have to despawn, and it despawns by going in there. After that, you could just dash in that corner and it'll push you up and let you run past. After that, we're ready to grab the Sentinel crystal in this level. Just make sure you don't let the tentacle hit you like I did. I just didn't expect to actually keep my speed like that. And like I said earlier, we'll be grabbing the ammo upgrade for Loot Magnet. That way we have fully upgraded Loot Magnet, which is a very clutch upgrade because it allows you to suck in health and armor from farther away, which will absolutely save your life. Once we get to this outside area beyond the cutscene, I'll show you guys a nice little skip that you can do to run past the parkour here. Although it's not the biggest deal if you can't do it, obviously. You could just do the parkour normally as well. Just make sure you're watching out for the spider because he will jump down on you and cause you issues. You can see that he nearly killed me and I got saved by the health gate. So just make sure you're watching out for him and not being a little goober like I was here. Basically, you can jump up on this pole and then you can dash boost off of this or just hop over if you want to, whatever you like. And now we're going to run past the Slayer gate because it's optional and scary. Also, I choose to kill these guys just so that you can see, but you can absolutely run past them as well, especially if you already have good health. Then I'll show you guys yet another fun skip that lets you skip the room with the cutscene in it. Basically, all you have to do is dash boost off these bones, and it'll let you fly up here, and we can move into the last parkour. And one final skip is basically if you get enough speed with like a dash boost and land on this chain and hit a hop properly, you can go over here and just run past all the parkour. That said, if you need a boost to your health and armor, you can grab the super boost that is actually on the way in the intended route. So it's up to you how you want to handle it, but I just did the skip to go faster. Once you get here, you want to use the portal and just rush your way over to the quad damage, which is going to spawn the spider. Kill him, go to the portal, heat blast, back through, take out the revenant, and that is all you need the quad damage for. At this point, as long as you kill those enemies, you're good and you've done enough with it. That said though, you should have some extra left over that you can do even more damage with. You'll see we have a triple chainsaw for this final Arachnotron. However, if you still have quad damage, you could just swag it as well. It's whatever you like to do. With that final Arachnotron down, that is all the heavies, and it's just some easy pickings on the fodder. So here's some fun fortress movement. If you dash at the bottom of the stairs, you get a big speed bump, and that's something a lot of people actually do on accident. So now we're back at the fortress before Cultist Base, and I thought I'd just talk about the run a little broadly again, since we do have some downtime. So you know right now we're holding on to quite a few weapon points because we haven't spent a single one yet. This is because we're trying to upgrade and start mastering the rocket launcher and the super shotgun as soon as we possibly can in the next level. So we'll start spending those points pretty soon. Cultist Base is where the game really starts to pick up and has a lot more difficulty. So don't feel bad if you're dying a lot in that level or just in the early game in general, because genuinely, just like in 2016, the early game is realistically harder than the late game. Especially once you have optimized BFG shots, which I'll be showing you the safest BFGs to take throughout the entirety of the late game. So now we're on our way to the Ripatorium. You can see that in the downtime I charged up a heat blast just because it's nice to have. I can take out a big clump of enemies, or I can have it as a panic button if I'm getting my ass beat by something in front of me. It's just nice to have, although the Ripatorium's not very hard, so I'll probably just go for the multi-kill opportunity. So I'll let the fight play out for you guys, because there's not really much to it. There's nothing but fodder here, so it's pretty easy. I've never died in Ripatorium before, and I sure hope you guys haven't either. So feel free to skip this if you think it's just easy enough for you. Once we're done with that, you can go pick up the tutorial Predator suit point and we'll move on to the next level. So this is Cultist Base. It's definitely one of the scariest levels in the game. It has some very difficult fights, but it also gives us two of our very important weapons for the arsenal. In the early part here though, I recommend charging up a heat blast, something that I actually failed to do. But doing so will help out in this introductory fight here. You can get a double kill on these guys with the PB, then make sure you do the flame belch on all the zombies to get the Predator suit point for the mission challenge, and finish this guy off using some sticky bombs and precision bolts. Then we can hit a Yeet blast on this Revenant here, and that'll finish him off, ending the fight. This is why I recommended charging up a heat blast, just so you could do that. From here, there's a dash boost off this little ramp that you can do to grab this battery, or you can go the intended way, but either way, you want to grab that Sentinel battery. It's very important. From here, we've just got some easy combat going into the trap room fight, so I'll just show you guys how I played through it, but it's not too hard. The main thing you want to do is try to maintain your chainsaw, because we're trying to save a triple chainsaw for the rocket launcher arena. That being said, obviously, it's better to not die than it is to save your chainsaw, so just prioritize that how you will. You'll also see I take the opportunity to charge up a heat blast on this Hell Knight, as we're going to be using yet another one here pretty soon in the outside area. Right now though, I'm just going to show you guys how to handle the 3 mancubuses in this fight, because you don't actually need to shoot them at all. While the first one is spawning, you can go and grab the ammo in this area. It's good to make good use of the ammo pickups in this fight, because there are a limited amount and you can run out of ammo if you're not safe. Once they're in this area, you could just use the traps to kill him. Once you kill the first one, you want to head to this side of the room, and then you're just going to wait for the last 2 to approach you. You could pick off their turrets if you want, or you could just save the ammo and let them push you while hiding behind the cover. Just be careful, because the imps will lob fireballs at you that can go over the cover. You'll see that I accidentally let one get through the trap, but obviously don't be like me, shoot the trap on time and they'll go down every time. After that, we've got the Predator suit point here. I'm charging up another heat blast because I had to swag one on the mancubus there. And then we can go into the next fight. All you need is 2 pips on the heat blast charged up for this, and the goal is to get to the top of this wall and then jump over and land on the ledge up here. This will enable you to heat blast these 3 mecha zombies, which makes the fight a lot easier because they are kind of annoying enemies with the amount of health they have. While you're up here, the enemies are going to kind of funnel up here one at a time, and the main concern is sniping the turret off the spider, which is also a mission challenge, so that's super nice. At this point, we're getting ready to go back into the tube, and there's a bunch of enemies in there now. Also, there's an armor through that area if you want to grab it if you're low on armor, but I'm going to just go towards the fight because I'm already full. This fight is optional and you can absolutely run past it, and if you're good at that, I recommend doing it. But I'm going to show you guys how I'm fighting it just so that you guys are able to if you need to also. That being said, this makes the ammo tight, and if you just run past this, then the ammo isn't tight for this part before the rocket arena. And don't forget that you can make use of the traps here as the enemies push you also, but a lot of them are ranged enemies and just sit back and shoot you. One of the big things to watch out for are the lost souls, as they do quite a bit of damage. And you can see I let them catch me off guard, and they do a bunch of damage to me. Either way, once you finish off all the enemies you need to, we can open up the yellow door and head out. But that door will function before you've killed the enemies, so you can also just run past and start opening at any point that you want to. This area, I decided to try to do the speedrun trick of freezing this soldier and doing a punch boost, but since I have my FPS low to be more relatable to everybody, I get a really weak punch boost. Either way, it doesn't really matter, it's just a speedrun trick and it doesn't really add anything for survivability, so you could just kill those guys and run past it. Now that we're getting ready to go into the rocket arena, you'll see that I grabbed the quick swapper mod. We want this because we're about to unlock our first weapon combo in the form of the PB rocket. So once we head into the fight, I recommend having your frag ready at least. The freeze is helpful, but you don't need it, but we are going to use our frag here. The first thing you want to do is take out the mancubus that is close to you, and then you'll see that I decided to take out another mancubus with PB rockets, but a smart play would be to take out the gargoyles instead because they do a lot more damage to you and there's way more of them. Once you see the Kako starting to get close to you, you'll want to feed him a grenade and use the grav lift to get the glory kill on him, and at this point we're changing positions because the enemies have closed in on us quite a bit. You can see that I dash back to take care of this guy, but then I'm going to take the grav lift to get away from this area because everybody's pushing me and it's getting dangerous. This is where I decided to use my triple chainsaw on one of the mancubuses. You need to be very careful of doing this and close the gap very effectively, otherwise the mancubus will absolutely fuck you up. One way to counter this is obviously just to use a freeze bomb or a frag grenade to stagger them though, or shoot off one of their weapons, which will also give you a stagger. Once you finish off the fight though, I'll show you guys this lovely little skip you can do. Pretty much just use the grab lift, jump under here, and dodge, and you'll land on the wall, skipping the little thing you have to punch. At this point, we grab Dazed and Confused, because it is a very safe rune that allows you to stun enemies for longer, and that is very helpful because it means even if you don't quite finish off the enemy, you'll get a bunch of time to deal with them later, or deal with other enemies that are causing you more problems. At this point, we're ready to be introduced to the Whiplash, and unfortunately, without Lock-on Burst, we don't have the hard counter, so we're going to do this setup where we start off with a frag and some rockets. Then we're going to switch to the freeze, wait for this guy to go between the barrels and freeze him. That's going to get his health super low, and then the last one, we're going to try to let get between the barrels and blow up with a rocket as well. Although it's pretty easy to mess that one up, but as long as you get rid of the initial two, the fight isn't too bad. That being said, if you do miss one of the initial two guys, the other ones will keep spawning, and so you need to just get away from the fight and start picking things off from a safety. Once we're done, we get to our weapon Bob Bot, and we're able to pick up Lock-on Burst, which is going to make the snakes a lot easier. Lock-on Burst is a huge upgrade, and it is one of the most powerful things in the entire game, and right away we're going to be taking the more expensive upgrade for it, and then later we're going to get the other upgrade, but for now we're saving weapon points to fully master the super shotgun as soon as we get it. These shield guys are super scary if you get close to them, so I wouldn't recommend trying to flame belch them because they will absolutely just tear your shit up the moment you get anywhere near them. But either way, you can do a dash boost here to skip this if you want, or you can just go the intended way, whatever you want to do. Either way, we're ready to get into the next combat arena, and this one is a little bit bigger than the last one. But since we have a lot more space to work with, it's not too hard. So, at this point, this Mancubus, you can do a SLOB if you want to, or you can do what I'm doing and just use some PB rockets on him instead. If you don't know what a SLOB is, I explained it and how to do it in the general information section, so I'd recommend going and watching that, but it's a little bit more complicated than Yeet blasting, so I'm not going to get into it. Once you've taken care of this little area, you're going to have a Caco spawns, and the Caco controls the pace of the fight. Once you kill him, the rest of the fight is going to start, and you'll want to come over here and spawn trap this Revenant, and then be ready to spawn trap the enemies on the other side in the form of this spider and the snake. You'll want to freeze the snake, and then ideally hit him with 3 sticky crits, although you'll see I miss one and get interfered with, so I just back up and start using rockets. At this point, the fight is no longer going the choreographed way that I wanted it to, and I've just lost a bunch of health, so I have to start improvising and playing safely now. You'll see that I was holding onto a Heat Blast, which actually saved me from this Hell Knight killing me right there. So, as always, just holding onto a Heat Blast in the early game is very helpful. And at this point, I'm kind of just running around and shooting the enemies as I can. I've realized that my ammo is low and I need to hit a chainsaw, so I go and do that. But there isn't really anything too crazy going on in this fight at this point. Just try to spam the Lock-on Burst because it's a very effective tool. You'll see here, I wasn't using it, but I recommend using it, especially if you're not that good at doing PB rocket combos. The Lock-on Burst will one-shot a lot of the heavy demons, and anything it doesn't one-shot, it almost always will two-shot. Or they just need a little bit of cleanup after, like the Mancubuses and spiders. Once you finish the fight, make sure you've let your first pip of the chainsaw recharge, and then grab this fuel so that you have 2 on the way out. When you get into this area, we'll want to grab the Sentinel battery as well as all the rocket ammo, and make sure you don't get hit by the Caco demon. You can just feed him a grenade if you need to. And we're going to want to pick up all the rockets because we can't chainsaw in this group that you're intended to, because we're trying to hold on to a triple chainsaw for the pit fight. Once you get in here, you'll be able to grab the ammo pickups that you might need, and then you can leave this room however you like. I like to do it in style using Moroccan spiced chicken with toasted vegetables, which I would say is a very worthy use of my blood punch. So you can do this to open the switch, or you can just back off and shoot the lost skulls if you're not able to do that. But now we're going to be getting into the pit fight, which is one that we're going to very heavily choreograph because it's kind of a difficult one. So the first step of the fight is to create a bit of an armor pool for the beginning of the fight. You can just pop these guys in the head and flame belch them, and that should have blown them all up, but it didn't for whatever reason. With this armor pool, you can take a bunch of damage in the early part, and it just won't affect you, which makes it very stress-free. These guys are pretty easy, just take them out however you see fit. But you do want to try to hold on to the other side's cue ball if you want, although this one doesn't matter for the fight. Once you've taken down all of these soldiers, you'll want to head over to the other side and look to the right, and you'll see a whiplash come down, which you can hit with the cue ball. But if you miss it, just use the backup of a Lock-on Burst to take them down nice and easy. At this point, you're going to have an Arachnotron and some more fodder drop in, and the Arachnotron is what triggers the rest of the fight to start. So if you want to be safe, you want to take out all of the fodder enemies before taking down the Arachnotron, and since you can pop his turret off initially, it's not too hard to do this safely. You should also take this time to ensure that you have 2 cue balls going into the double Mancubus part. You'll also see that I have not taken the fuel yet, but you should take this fuel at the start of the fight. Either way, you could start off on this side, cue ball the first guy, and for some reason he was already dead for me, but you can use a freeze bomb on him or just cue ball him directly if you're feeling confident. The backup plan, however, is to grab this fuel at the start of the fight, and that way you'll have a triple chainsaw for any heavy giving you issues. This is especially nice because sometimes the mancubuses just won't cooperate with you, and being able to insta-kill them and get iframes is very helpful in this confined space. That being said, the chainsaw is very optional, so if you carry it out, it's no problem. You can just use it on another heavy as you see fit later. However, I'm not going to do that just in case you're leaving this fight without the triple chainsaw. And with that fight done, we can grab the Sentinel crystal before moving on to the intermittent combat before the super shotgun. I go ahead and grab the health upgrade for quick draw belch. Health upgrades are very nice in the early game before we have the flame chain unlocked on the super shotgun, so getting health quickly is very nice. So here I decided to do the secret encounter because it actually gives us a very nice weapon point to have our rocket launcher upgraded at the end of the level, but if you're scared by this fight you can also just skip it. You can see the way I'm doing it here. I use a lock-on burst on the Kako after using the cue ball to take out the Revenant, and after that everything goes down super easy. You can also just feed the Kako a grenade if you want to as well. It's kind of up to you how you want to deal with it. After we take that guy out, I'll just show you how I go through this, but it shouldn't be too difficult. I just decided to waste my chainsaw here so that way I don't accidentally use it on a more serious demon, but obviously this Kako is completely on his own and you should have absolutely no problem. Now up here you're going to have 2 Revenants in this room and some mecha zombies. I like to just go towards the secret and kind of ignore the second Revenant, but if he happens to be in your sightline you can hit him with a lock-on burst as well, but that's a very quick way to take them both out without letting them hit you. Also, as always, don't forget to make good use of your flame belch to stack up your armor between major fights. It's always nice to go into the big fight arenas with full armor, because it makes it easier to maintain that armor throughout the fight. I decided to skip covering this just because it's so easy. You get such a ridiculous amount of health, this fight is just not an issue. You basically have to try to die in order to die in this part. Although, do bear in mind that it will actually count as your death in ultranightmare, even though it's not the Doomslayer dying, so don't mess around there. Now that we have the super shotgun, we're going to immediately fully upgrade it, and right away we want to start farming up ticks for the chain here. The mastery on the super shotgun is absolutely insane, because it allows us to stack up our armor almost constantly. For now, I'm going to show you how to go through each of these little tubes here. You can open them up at your own pace, but basically I just go around in this direction, and this is a very nice way to take them all out. You use one of the cue balls on this guy, but I messed it up and had to just take him down with super shotgun and PB instead. For this one, we're going to use Rocket and Frag to take out the Lost Souls without having to deal with them, and then just PB Rocket the remainder. They should go down pretty quickly. These guys we use our Freeze Bomb on, and then go over here to fire a cue ball at. If you want to be safe, you can have the cue ball already opened up, so that way you need a little bit less time to get to it, but it's not the end of the world anyways. It's just a Hell Knight and an Arachnotron anyway. Then here, I like to chainsaw these guys if I can, just because it's nice to go into the next encounter with full ammo. So now we're done in this room, and we go down into this little hallway here, which you can very easily skip with a little bit of use of the meat hook. Even with lower FPS than mine, you'll still be able to absolutely fly through that room, and if you're not able to use the strafing with the meat hook setup like I did there, you can also just meat hook straight at an enemy, and then switch weapons mid-hook, and you'll keep all the speed and be able to just jump over them as well. Also, there's a dash boost you can do at that spot if you'd like to skip the parkour in here. I've been doing that for so long now, I genuinely don't remember how to do the intended route in this room actually. And if you've seen what's in this secret encounter, we won't be doing it. This is probably the hardest secret encounter in the game, and there's just no reason to do it. So we're going to go on to the next little area here. This one's very easy because the enemies actually start up grouped up, so you can just use a little bit of splash and take them all down super quickly before moving on. Just make sure you're watching out for the tentacle here. Tentacles are all static in this game, so once you know where they spawn, they will always spawn in the same places. And now we can move on to this fight. The idea is just to use the cue balls for the most obvious uses here, which is to take out the Revenant and the Mancubus, and then the rest of this fight is easy pickings. Once you take down all the enemies in this arena, a Kako demon is going to spawn off in the distance, and you can either feed him a grenade or just fire a lock-on burst at him like that if you want to, and then we can finish off this area. Be careful if you get the dash storage in this fight, because if you fly off to the right side there, you'll actually hardlock the game, and since it's Ultra Nightmare, your save will be completely broken and unusable. All you have to do is not fly to the right side though, it's not too difficult. You just have to let him start talking before you go and trigger the yellow door. This fight isn't too bad. If you saw the thing that I used the freeze bomb on, that's actually because the Hell Knight can pretty easily weave through those axes if you don't freeze him, but if you just throw a freeze bomb there, it sets off the axes and freezes him into them, so they'll take him down every time. Then in this area, we're going to leave some of the enemies just so that we can use a meat hook to skip the cutscene in here, but obviously if you are afraid of the enemies, you can just kill them and take the intended route if you like. But as a speedrunner, I just can't stand to watch completely optional cutscenes. There's a bunch of ways to do this, and if you were being smart, you'd probably just want to leave only one enemy up. But I don't really care, it's not that many enemies anyway, and they're not too scary, especially since the shield guys have shotguns, and all you have to do is stay kind of far from them. Just make sure you're ready to fight them when the cutscene finishes, and also bear in mind that this cutscene is going to drop you off in the same spot every time. It's not going to leave you where you left off when you triggered the cutscene. But with this done, now we're ready to move on to the final part of the level. So once you get out here, make sure you grab all the rockets you can before getting into this fight, and don't forget about the Predator suit point to the right side of this hallway, which will leave us with 3 points to spend for where we like. You can grab either the extra stun or cooldown on the frag or the freeze, but I decided to go for the longer freeze on the freeze bomb because I end up using it quite a bit and it's a very powerful ability. Once you get into this fight, the beginning of the fight is going to be triggered by taking out 2 revenants, so you can kind of take your time doing that if you need some time to calm down. But there's not really a whole lot going on, so I just go ahead and take them both out. From here, we're waiting for a Hell Knight to spawn up near the gas can on the right side of the arena, so I just kill this soldier and then get ready to spawn trap him. But you'll actually see that I missed the spawn and he's just running around already. But he's supposed to spawn on the pillar I'm currently standing on. Either way, he also spawns alongside the Arachnotron, so you'll want to take care of him as well. If you brought a triple chainsaw into this arena, which you absolutely can do at this point because there's more fuels, you can use it on him, or you can try to save it for the rest of the arena. But once you have the Spider and Hell Knight taken out, the next wave of enemies are going to spawn in a little bit, which includes a snake, which has a very distinct sound, and you can use that as your sound cue to come and pick up the haste power up in the corner here, which is going to give you infinite ammo and basically just enable you to spam lock-on bursts on everything. You should also be firing rockets into the crowds of fodder to get increased duration on the power-up whenever you're looking for more heavies to burst, but otherwise, the fight goes pretty easily from there. So with Cultist Base down, you've got a bit of a downhill ride for the majority of this level. That said, this initial part can still catch you off guard with the Mancubus because they still do an absurd amount of damage to you right now because we're still lacking in upgrades. So you can see I go for a PB and rocket on him, making sure to pop his arms off with the PB shots to keep him staggered the whole time. And then from there, I use the meat hook to get up on the high ground, which makes it harder for the enemies to hit me, and then I'm able to leave no problem. You could also use a triple chainsaw if you carried it through the last fight, and that's actually what speedrunners do, but it is a little bit difficult to maintain the ammo like that, so that's why I didn't do it in this video. Once you get here, you're going to have some fodder surrounding you, but they're not too bad to take out. Don't forget you can use the meat hook to go up once again. I like to clear out a little bit of the fodder, stack up my armor and ammo as I can, and then I meat hook up to the coin up here, which is a much easier and safer route than going the intended way. Once you're up here, you can either just double dash to the platform across, or you can try to do a meat hook like I did here. I didn't really execute it properly, but I still kind of did it, so that's pretty fun. Anyway, if you do it smartly, you can grab a second fuel pip, but I grabbed it a little bit prematurely. You'll also see that I don't take a weapon mod here just because none of these are really useful. We already have the good mods for all of our weapons. So I'm just going to move into this fight by charging up a Heat Blast before using it on the Pinky and taking him out. The Heat Blast will falter the Pinkies, which is a very nice way of taking them out in the early game because we don't have a ton of options for them yet. So while you're clearing out the fodder here, I actually recommend charging up another tier 1 Heat Blast on these guys before the Revenants spawn, but you can see I'm just farming some meat hook ticks instead to work on that mastery. You can see here though, once I see another Pinky, I decide to charge up my Heat Blast for him and take him down using it. Another way to take out the Pinky is to use either the frag or the freeze grenade. They both work on him, because the frag grenade will make them stumble in the same way that the Heat Blast does. At this point, you're kind of just running around the outside of the arena, taking out the heavies as you see them to progress the fight. I'm also using my meat hook pretty often. It's a good movement tool and it's just a strong weapon as well. And obviously working towards the mastery is a good thing. You will see that I get smacked by this Pinky and have a bit of a problem with him, but eventually I just decide to use a freeze bomb and finish off everything that I froze. At this point I'm either going back and forth between the PBSSG or the lock-on burst to finish off enemies, and chainsawing as I need to. You'll see that I don't frequently run out of ammo while I'm mid-combo, and this is because I'm watching my ammo pretty often, just because running out of ammo mid-combo and then stopping shooting the enemy is going to stop you from staggering them, which will allow them to shoot you, which will make you die. I know that that might come as a bit of a shocker, but letting the enemy shoot you will actually cause you to die in this game. At this point, I now know that the snake is around, and pretty much the only counter to the snake is to use the meat hook to go super high up into the air, so I start using that on repeat, as well as the jump pad here to try to get away. You'll see that I lose a bunch of health, so I do a little bit of movement and take out some enemies to get my health back before going back to finishing off all of the relevant demons. You'll also see that I go for a glory kill, which I don't very frequently do, but if you're low on health, a glory kill gives you an absurd amount of health, like 60, 70, 80 depending on how low you are, and so it ends up being worth it at that point. but a lot of the times Gore kills will make you take more damage than the health that it would give you, because you're stuck in an animation, and once you get out of the animation, the enemies are just going to shoot at you while you don't have any movement speed. And at this point, I'm at the end of the fight. There's just an imp running around somewhere, so I take the opportunity to meat hook a couple of zombies down. You could actually do this indefinitely if you wanted to just get the meat hook mastery right now to be extra safe, but I'll save you guys that and just move on from here without mastering it for anybody who doesn't feel like it. That way you're still on the same pace as I am. Also, there was a Sentinel battery in this room, but I apparently missed it, which I didn't even realize when I was playing. I just noticed it while editing. So that's interesting, but fortunately you leave Doomhunter base with 7 Sentinel batteries once you get back to the fortress, so missing one I didn't even notice it was missing. But you'll want to grab it if you want to be a completionist and have as many as possible in the early game for more Predator suit points. At this point, the rest of the level is pretty much just simple incidental combat. There's not a lot of major fights up until you get to the Doom Hunter. So I'll show you guys the bigger ones, but the rest of the level is going to go by pretty quickly. So once you get into this area, you want to just snipe down the carcass really nice and quick. Every time you do a shot, you want to switch off and back to the PB, that way you could fire it a little bit quicker. Then from there, you want to move up and get your triple kill with the frag grenade. Remember in this room, as you could see that just happened there, the lava dumping there will kill you almost instantaneously. And I have actually lost an Ultra Nightmare run to this before, so make sure you're not standing in the middle of the room, because otherwise that environmental hazard will just absolutely ruin your day. At this point, once you've taken out the Revenants, you could farm the remaining zombies for ticks on your meat hook mastery, or use them to jump up to the end of the room so that you don't have to do the parkour. Either way, we're ready to move on to the next part. So this rune is where I actually diverge from my speedrun route and end up picking up the Equipment Fiend power-up instead of the Savagery, which is normally what you'd use in a speedrun. And this is because having more equipment to spam is obviously better. Equipment is probably the biggest safety net in this game, and so being able to spam even more of it is really nice. And in a couple of levels, we'll get even more powerful abilities to scale this up much higher than we already can now. So with that out of the way, I'll show you guys this combat now. I like to just use a freeze on this group so I can take out the Hell Knight before he can chase me. And I also go for a double chainsaw during this fight, just because I want to leave the fight with full rockets and as many PB shots as I possibly can, because we're going to be doing a little bit of plinking from far away in the next arena after this one. But there's not really much to this encounter, so I'll just let you guys see how I play it, and that way you can see the demons and how to take them on. Now, once you get into this room, you're going to want to just fire PB rockets across the map and hit as many things as you can with it. Mostly though, you just want to take out the Mancubus, or at least pop his arms off at a bare minimum. The thing about taking your time back here and doing this is that the enemies are also standing in the floor traps and taking damage. So that's why it's advantageous to just take your time back there and just pick away at them from far away. Once you pull up, you can finish off the enemies, and you'll notice that a lot of them have reduced health. However, for whatever reason, I find that this combat encounter can just sneak up and do a bunch of damage to me seemingly out of nowhere. So just make sure you're watching your health as always, especially here, and don't let your guard down. Once you finish watching your cutscene, you can go the intended way and wait for the wall, or you can dash boost off this little floor trap and take the route I'm showing here instead, which is what we do in the speedrun, and I just prefer doing it this way anyway. I just find it more enjoyable, and it's a little bit quicker too. You'll also see that I'm not getting an animation whenever I walk through these collectibles, and that's because I'm switching weapons right as I pick them up, so that way the switching weapon animation happens instead of the animation of holding onto the item. That's just a nice little speedrun trick as well that just saves a couple of minutes throughout the run of just not staring at items. Once we get out here, I'm going to elect to clear out this fight just so that I can show you guys how it's done if you want to, but you can absolutely just run past this fight, zero problems. Normally in the speedrun, we just immediately do a gigantic meat hook across the massive chasm to the end of the level, so I'm not really used to fighting this, and I didn't have a super specialized way of taking it on, but the fight's not that hard since it's just a Caco Demon, a Arachnotron, and a couple of fodders. So once we get over here, we'll make sure that we grab the Sentinel Crystal after I go and clear this room out. I like using these zombies to stack up on things that I need. Either a blood punch, I can get ammo, I can get armor, I can do some meat hook mastery ticks, whatever I need to do. And then we can head outside and grab this Sentinel Crystal, where I take another health upgrade, that way we have more health for the boss fight up ahead. But in the future, I'm going to be taking more armor upgrades because pretty soon we're going to have our meat hook mastery unlocked. And grabbing those armor upgrades will also allow us to fully upgrade the special ability on the crystal, so we'll have a faster flame belch, and we'll be getting more blood punches, which is super helpful. So getting in here, I found a pinky, which caught me very off guard because I have literally never seen a pinky here before. I don't know if I just was like going through it too quickly and like skipped a trigger for it or something, but I guess watch out for that guy being there. Unfortunately, I wasted my blood punch on it, but we'll be able to get another one before the boss fight. But you do want to take a blood punch into the boss fight because it is a very powerful tool against the Doom Hunters. You'll also see that I'm clearing out this fight, but this fight actually doesn't reward any combat points, so you can easily skip it if you want to as well. Do whatever you like with it. I'm just showing you guys how I cleared it in case you want to clear it so that you don't have any trouble with that. And then make sure you go to the right here so that you can grab the Praetor Suit Point. If you are running past all the enemies, then you can actually just use a meat hook to jump up here really quickly too, which is a nice little tiny skip you can do as well. Also, you should probably avoid the lasers, but I just don't really care because I'm going fast anyway, and that's just what I do. In this room, you see I'm going to use the lock-on burst to take out prowlers. It's not actually an effective weapon against them, but I'm just trying to get the mastery going so that way I can take out marauders a little bit easier later on using slobs. However, if you don't plan on using slobs very often, you can feel free to just not do what I'm doing with the prowlers and save your lock-on ammo for something a little bit more dangerous. Either way, I thought I'd just show you guys how I got through here. You could see I went for some glory kills to get my blood punch back, and now I have that ready for the boss fight, because this is going to be the last full fight that we can actually stack up our resources for the boss fight. So once you get into this room, you can actually come around and you'll grab a Sentinel armor there if you need it. Then you can move on towards the secret, which is just on top of this tower thing. And instead of going all the way around the tower and fighting through a bunch of enemies, instead you could just hop off the wall upwards and go over the backwards way. Doing this is still very likely to spawn the enemies, but occasionally it doesn't spawn them. And while you're falling down, just make sure you shoot the target so that you can run past these guys easily. I do decide to hit a chainsaw on this dude on my way out, and I try to feed that guy a grenade, but end up failing, and if I just run away from him a little bit better, I wouldn't have been hit. So that was kind of a dumb decision on my part, because now I'm not going into the Doom Hunter fight with a bunch of armor. Another thing you'll see me doing is charging up a Heat Blast, because that is another form of stagger. Similar to the Pinkies, we can also stagger the Doom Hunter using this, which opens him up to take more damage from us. So on the Doom Hunter fight, you basically just want to use all your forms of staggering him, and then do PB shotgun shots in between that to just do as much damage as you can early on. However, if you know that you don't have full rockets, then I recommend not fully killing him, because once you knock him out of his wheelchair, he's going to start spamming heavy demons at you, and the fight gets a whole lot more dangerous. You need pretty much full rocket ammo to take him out once you have him out of his wheelchair, because it takes 3 lock-on bursts, so make sure you're all chainsawed up on your rocket launcher ammo, and once you're ready to go, you can finish him off from whatever you weren't able to get in the beginning, and you'll see I just charge up another Heat Blast to get enough damage in without getting hurt. Something to bear in mind is that if you're playing on uncapped FPS, the Doom Hunter is one of a couple of enemies that have ridiculous amounts of melee lunge whenever you have high FPS, so playing at like 120 or just 100 FPS will make him a lot more manageable, whereas if you're playing at like 200 FPS or more, he's going to absolutely fly across the map and even teleport to get melee hits on you. But you can see this guy's not too difficult. Just make good use of the meat hook, launching yourself up into the air, and firing down lock-on bursts once he's out of his wheelchair. You'll get all your ammo back when you switch phases, but you don't get your health and armor refilled, so I like to grab those before moving on. Once we're jumping in, you'll notice that we had a bunch of Praetor Suit points. We're going to grab the double frag ability now because this is going to give us yet another stagger, and I also charged up a Heat Blast before hopping in. You'll see a cut, and that's actually just because I took a super goofy death, but I'm obviously trying to show you guys how to get this done. And so I was using just regular nightmare mode so that I could reload checkpoints to show you guys things better. So you will see some occasions where I very obviously did load checkpoint, but I'm not trying to pass this off like it was an actual ultra nightmare run, although I do have a couple of those under my belt already, as you could tell by the golden Slayer skin. So the ideal setup here is that you pretty much just don't want to kill one of them until you're ready to kill both of them, because once you fully kill one of them, then the heavy spam that happened when you knocked the first one out of his wheelchair is going to start happening. And because it doesn't happen until you fully kill one of them and they have less health, I actually consider this fight to be a bit easier than the first one. So you'll see once I have them both knocked out of their chair, I start going for the glory kills and getting one of them low, and now the other guy's practically one shot now that I'm in the dangerous part of the fight. So at this point I'm trying to find him, and I'm using the chainsaw to buy myself time while I'm looking for him, and as you can see I'm also just trying to stay as airborne as I possibly can, and once I have him taken down, we can go for the glory kill and finish off the level. So now that we are out of that level and you're back in the fortress, you should breathe a big sigh of relief because that was probably the biggest choke point of the entire game. There are certainly hard parts still left over in the game, but at this point we get to grab 2 Sentinel crystals in the fortress, which is going to allow us to upgrade our stats significantly. So like I said earlier at the last crystal, now I'm going to be taking the matching armor upgrades for the health upgrades we've gotten so far. However, if you aren't comfortable with that, then you can also just grab more health upgrades as well, because these stat boosts are super helpful, and it's very easy to argue that they're more important than the special abilities that you get for getting the full versions of the upgrades. and I use my last 2 to unlock a Praetor suit point, which just allows us to get some suit upgrades a little bit sooner in the next level. And kicking off Super Gore Nest, you should be able to finish off the mastery for the Super Shotgun pretty early into this level if you are doing a good job of focusing it in the last level. However, you can get it even a little bit later than me, but I would recommend getting it before the first buff totem room because it does help out there quite a bit. Also, getting multi-kills with it does give you multiple ticks, so you can go for those very well. So you can see I'm very close to getting it, so I'm just focusing on getting them before triggering the big arena fight out here. I did actually hit the trigger here, but it takes a while for the Mancubus to hop up here, so I had time to finish off the mastery before he got up there and got in my way. And you saw as soon as I got it, I did the trick using the PB, where basically you can flame chain an enemy and then switch to the PB while you're on them, and because the chain basically locks your camera onto them for a second, it aims the PB right at their head and gives you basically a free headshot, so that way you don't have to use 2 shotgun shells to get the ammo, and instead you could just use some assault rifle ammo, which is a lot cheaper. From there, you'll see that I took out the Mancubus, and I'm going to take out this one using PB rockets. Then I'm going to go after the third Mancubus, which is down lower in the level, and I'm going to hit a triple chainsaw on him just because we have one and we need ammo at this point. You'll also see I used a freeze bomb on him, and that is just because he could still kind of smack your shit if you don't have some sort of way of staggering him while you're closing the distance. Now I just have some fodder to take out, and once I take them out, the Revenant spawns, and we kind of get the second half of the fight going on. I like to take the rest of the fight on this side of the map. Overall, the big thing you want to do in this arena is just to stay up high. Don't get stuck down in the trenches because that's where you'll die. It's kind of just a great line for this game. Stay up high or you fucking die. Staying in the area I'm at can be a little bit dangerous, but I'm kind of just used to doing it in the speedrun, so I'm doing it anyway. If you're slower at killing the demons, I recommend taking full advantage of the size of the arena and just making wide circles around the centerpiece, because that will split up the demons and it'll make them slow down in shooting you, and also cause them to do a bunch of climbing animations to try to catch up to you. Remember, you want to be careful of these snake attacks because they're very hard to dodge, and if you meat hook way up into the air, you can avoid most of their attacks that way. However, just like a regular jump up into the air isn't enough height to avoid their attacks, you have to actually get a really high jump to avoid them. You'll see I had a bit of a close call, but I was able to get out of it, not too big of a deal. Now, I'm going to show you guys the easiest way to get glory kills on the pinkies so that you can get under their Praetor suit point, and that is just to do 3 PBs and 3 rockets right into their face. That will set up a glory kill every time, it's consistent, and the only time it messes up is if you fail the execution. Once you come up here, you can stack off these zombies however you need to. You can get some more meat hook mastery ticks if you need that, or you could just get some resources like ammo and armor for the next fight. Once we're in here, we're going to pick up the Destroyer Blade, and right away we're going to fully upgrade it because the Destroyer Blade is extremely powerful. If you guys aren't already very familiar with the spawns, I would only recommend using the Destroyer Blades in the spots that I show you to have actual setups for. But once you're familiar with the spawns of the enemies, you can use the D-Blade very often, and it is an extremely powerful tool because it does a huge amount of damage and has an endless pierce and massive amount of splash. We'll actually be making use of it in this fight right here. After we take out that first Dread Knight with a freeze bomb, you can come over here and kill this guy. Then we're going to set up a D-Blade while the Dread Knight pushes up towards us, and once the Dread Knight comes in front of us, we can shoot the D-Blade at him, which will almost kill him. That's also going to kill a bunch of the fodders, and you can finish off the rest of them using stuff like barrels or just shooting them. You'll also see that I took upgrades to make my barrels drop ammo and not hurt me, which is actually a super nice upgrade because it allows you to go longer without needing chainsaws, and it's just a super helpful tool. You'll see here I set off the secret, and another pinky pops out, which again I'm just going to use the 3 PBs and rockets to take down for a glory kill. However, unfortunately, something went wrong. I must have missed a shot or something like that, so the math didn't add up perfectly, and I had to try to just shoot him in the face until he got into a glory kill. If you mess up the combo, it's kind of difficult to fix it because the pinkies have a tendency of just outright dying, but if you're lucky, you can just plink them down with regular heavy cannon shots, and sometimes you can still recover it. That being said, there's like 6 pinkies in this level, so it's not really a big deal if you miss this one. Also, don't forget the Praetor suit point on the way out. That's the reason we actually did this secret. And now you can head into this secret before the totem fight, which has a bunch of rockets in case you're missing any. So this fight is kind of a scary one because it's actually the only buff totem in the game that you can't just immediately take out. So you have to actually fight the buffed enemies here, which can be a little bit scary. Fortunately, there's not too many of them. The main thing you want to do is make sure that you are kind of staying around where you know the correct portal is to get to the buff totem immediately, because if you don't take out the buff totem as soon as possible, then you're going to have more shit spawning until you can find it. That being said, I recommend practicing this fight a little bit and finding a setup for yourself where you can keep track of where the portal is, while also maintaining the good movement that you need to have to avoid getting hit by the buffed up enemies. Otherwise, this fight isn't really that hard once you have it down, and if you do end up messing up and not getting to the right portal off the start, I would recommend making use of your frag grenades and freeze grenades to stun enemies and run past them until you can get it, just rushing as fast as you can to find it. Also, we're going to be doing the secret encounter here because it's not too difficult, and it's also a mission challenge, so we get extra goodies for it. You can see I go for this kind of scary destroyer blade setup, but you can also just sit back and PB rocket both of these guys, and then chainsaw one of the zombies on the way out of the encounter, no problem. I just like the D-blade because it's the speedrun setup, so it goes a little bit faster. After that, we'll head this way, and we're actually going to grab the rune here so that we can have saving throw in our back pocket whenever we need it. At this point, we are late enough into the game that you should just use it whenever you end up needing it. However, it's not something you should just have equipped all the time, because that would be reducing your amount of overall powerfulness, which will actually make you more likely to die. And realistically, you can kind of tell when you're going to die most of the time, and just open up your menu and put it on before that happens. Getting into this fight, I recommend taking out the Mancubus from far back here first. I just use some PB rockets to get him down, and then I move towards the quad damage so that I can super shotgun down the Arachnotrons here. Pretty much, if you can take out the Arachnotrons and then spawn in the Dread Knight by taking out some of the fodder and kill him with the quad damage, you'll be in a pretty good spot to finish this fight. But if you do it perfectly, you can kill everything right as it spawns with the quad damage, and it is obviously the safest way to do it if you just kill everything before it ever has the chance to exist. You can see that I screw up the fight pretty badly here and don't even have the quad damage to finish off the Dread Knight, so I'll let you see how I deal with it, but you can definitely execute it better than I did here. And that's the fight done. And if you ever needed it, you can also use the super boost down there, which will refill your health and armor. But if you don't need it, we'll come back to this area and do another fight later, so you can use it there as well. Once you get into this room, it's just a little bit of incidental combat. We are going to have an invisible Pinky right here, and you get a very easy glory kill by just shooting him in the face twice with the ballista. These guys do count towards the challenge, so you can absolutely get your glory kills on them. Once you take him out, you'll want to turn around and deal with the Mancubus because he'll be pushing up towards you. And overall, if you go too slowly, then you're going to want to use a freeze bomb on one of the enemies, either the Pinky or the Mancubus, so that you can take care of one before the other. That way you're not getting sandwiched by them. You also see here, I took my upgrade. And at this point, we kind of have the major upgrades already, so I just grab a little bit more health. Since all the other ones have ammo as their secondary nodes, we're not ready to take those yet, and so I'm just going for stat buffs with this one. I set up a nice little D-blade in this room because everything is just lined up for it, and then all that's left are 2 prowlers and a shield guy. So it's a pretty easy fight, and I go for a chainsaw on the shield guy just because it's convenient. And once again, you'll see me using my lock-on burst on the prowlers, but you definitely don't have to do that. A great choice is also just meat hooking them and then getting a squared on blast with the super shotgun, and that will actually one-shot them. Going into this fight, you want to be a little bit careful, especially if you're using the rocket, because these carcasses will basically immediately put up a wall right in your face. So that's why I went for the PB SSG instead of the PB rocket on the Mancubus in this situation. Then I just stack up on the zombies for armor and ammo, and we're ready to move on. And this is another secret encounter you can do. I go for a D-blade with a frag grenade on this guy, but you can also just hit him with PBSSG since you're up close, and you can also use your freeze bomb on him if you're worried about it. Then I hop down here and take out the rest of the guys, and just bear in mind that the carcass can sometimes hop up top, and you'll want to be watching out for that, but generally he's easy to hit with rockets because he doesn't put his wall in an effective way to block you. Once we're done in here, you can come out here and grab the Praetor Suit Point. There's also going to be a Pinky spawning in the exit doorway that you'll want to watch out for, and if you need to, you can go for the glory kill setup on him using your PB and rocket as well. But since I already have my 3, I'm just going to freeze him and insta-kill him instead. You'll also see that I kind of tried to run away from it at first, but then I remembered that this isn't a speedrun, and we're going to grab the chain gun. I would recommend saving a freeze for this guy, but I just wanted to demonstrate that a frag works just as well as a freeze in 90% of situations. And now we have some cramped combat with just a couple of enemies. I just take out these guys using my PB and my plasma rifle since they have the shields. Normally I just do a D-blade in here, but it actually heavily relies on hitting B-hops, so I didn't want to force you guys to have to do that. And I have no idea where the snake went. Normally there's a snake there. Then I get a chainsaw in here, and once you take out all of the fodder in this room, a Dread Knight is going to spawn behind you and a carcass is going to come out of these tooth walls. So what I recommend doing is running up to where the Dread Knight spawns and just killing him right as he spawns. That way the Dread Knight isn't close to you while you're also dealing with the carcasses. That being said, these guys are optional for combat rating, so you can also just try to run past them and make use of your frags and freezes if you want to. That is actually what we do in the speedrun, so it's a viable strat if you're up to it. Either way, now that we have the chain gun, we're going to go ahead and pick up Energy Shield, and this is an absolutely amazing panic button weapon. Basically, if you're cornered or something like that, or you just know you're about to take a bunch of damage, you can whip out the energy shield and it will tank 100% of the damage for up to, I believe, 3 or 4 times your health. You'll also see I took another Praetor suit upgrade, but after the upgrades in DHB, the rest are kind of optional and you can sort of do them based on how you like them. However, I do recommend upgrading your freeze bomb as soon as you can, as it is super powerful with the upgrades, giving you back more health and allowing you to do more damage to bigger enemies later in the game. You'll see in this fight that I am just running past most of it. We pretty much just take out the buff totem and then run past these enemies. These guys don't give any combat rating, so just like before, they are totally optional, and I believe it's easier to run past them than it is to fight them, especially since the arena is covered in lava and shit, and it's just a painful area to fight in. So, if you just run past them, you can get through that arena no problem. And similarly here, we're doing the same thing, because actually if you do kill this Pinky, it's going to spawn a Dread Knight, but you don't have to deal with him if you leave him up. But obviously, if you do need a glory kill, you can clear out all the other enemies in the room, glory kill the Pinky, and then get ready for the Dread Knight. Either way, we're ready to keep moving through the level. We've got a Praetor suit point here that we're going to grab, and we're still grabbing all the Praetor suit points just because it is beneficial to us to get our upgrades that we want, but in later levels we're going to stop doing that. You can freeze this snake to not have to deal with him, and then I use a D-Blade, but you can also just do like PBSSG or Lock-on Burst or whatever to take him out, but the D-Blade destroys all the stuff behind him, so that's kind of nice. Then you have this fight, and I recommend just getting through it as fast as you can. You can see that I did kind of a ridiculous B-hop chain after a Ballista boost, but you can also just Ballista boost as you turn the corner there, and you can kind of get up in the guy's face like that as well. Basically, I just went for an SSG shot while up close to do a guaranteed stagger on the Mancubus. You can also toss a frag, or wait until your freeze is back and use a freeze in that room as well if you need to though. Once we get into this fight, we have a Sentinel battery to grab, so you could just Ballista boost while going up this grab lift, and it will enable you to just jump into this room. If you aren't able to do that though, you can also just use the meat hook to jump up here really easily as well. One thing to bear in mind in this fight is that once you kill the last Arachnotron, all of the fodder are going to almost immediately despawn, so you won't be able to chainsaw afterwards. So with that in mind, I go for a chainsaw here, so that way I'll have ballista ammo going into the final part, which can be kind of helpful, but it's definitely not a deal breaker. You don't really need it for sure. Either way, this fight is really easy. It's just a couple of Arachnotrons and some fodder, and once you take them out, we can go ahead and put the keys in the remaining slots and move on to the end of the level. So for the escape, I'm going to take it really slowly and not do any fancy tricks, but you can absolutely use stuff like dash boost and ballista boosting to get through it even quicker, which I would argue is also safer. This part you want to watch out for the tentacles because they can kind of whoop your ass like they did to me here, but don't forget that you can also do a flame belch on them and a chainsaw to stack up some armor, which kind of helps out. Once you get to this part, you're going to want to use a grenade just to stun this guy and run through. You can even stop and kill him if you want to, like I did here, just because it made sense. But if he's out of the way, you can absolutely run past. In this room, you want to toss a freeze right in the middle. It'll hit both of the Mancubuses, and you can just run right past them. Then we just keep running some more, and you'll see I'm doing single dashes because that is actually faster than doing double dashes. The cooldown is just much faster. And you can see just like that, we're out of there pretty much no problem. So we get to go back to the fortress, and while they were yapping, I went ahead and picked up a Praetor suit point, and I believe you should actually have enough batteries to pick up 2, but I just don't really care that much, and at this point I have most of the upgrades I already want anyways, so I'm not that asked about it, and I'd rather just get on with the run. But just bear in mind that there are a total of 4 Praetor suit points you can grab out of the fortress, as you have enough batteries for them. So now we're on to Art Complex, and Super Gornos was kind of a chill level after DHB, but Art Complex kind of brings back the intensity that we had back before that one. So right away, you're going to start getting blasted as soon as you leave the elevator, so you want to be ready for that and make sure you're paying attention, even though it's like a 10-second auto-scroller and you can kind of stop paying attention to it while you're waiting. In this, once you push up, you're going to have a Mancubus spawn, so make sure you're ready for that, and you can clear out everything before that and then push up if you want to be extra safe. But I just wasn't that worried about it because I'm used to this fight anyway. Once you take him out, you'll see a snake start to spawn, and I actually go for a D-Blade once he's spawning, which is a very convenient way of just taking out all the rest of the enemies in that wave. At this point, you could do another D-Blade, but the Pinky will actually tank it if he's facing you, so I elect to just do what I did here instead. And you'll see I also go for a chainsaw here to refill some ammo, but before we continue on much farther, I am going to actually back up and pick up another fuel. But for now, I want to finish clearing out the enemies in this room, and then I can go and grab the fuel once I have an opportunity to step away and go back into the fight. Once you do take out all the enemies and you push up here, a Revenant's going to pop through, and you can take care of both of his crit spots to work on the mission if you want to. And then I go for another D-Blade here. However, I am being kind of careful to sit back so that way I don't spawn in more heavies. And then you'll see that I accidentally spawned in the Mancubus sooner than I meant to, but you do want to chainsaw the Mancubus once he jumps over to you. A smarter person would have spawned the Hell Knight and then backed up and done the D-Blade, but I kind of messed it up and just did what you saw there instead. From here, I'm taking out the 2 enemies near this spot, and then I'm waiting with my D-blade until I can see a spot to hit both of the snakes with it, and that'll finish off this room super quickly. If you're not able to use the D-blade here, you'll just want to use the lock-on burst and possibly use the meat hook to stay up in the air and avoid their attacks. In this room, if you sit in the back, you won't spawn in some of the enemies, and it makes it a little bit easier to take out the room, so I just use a D-blade, and we're not going to be going for the challenge that involves popping the shields, but if you do want to do that, then you could set that up as well. It's not too dangerous, but at this point, we don't need to be going for literally every upgrade and collectible anymore, so I'm taking out the ones that have a little bit of risk to them. Once we're done with this, we have yet another smaller hallway, and the setup I go for in here is to run up, spawn in all the enemies. Once you see a Mancubus, you've spawned in everything, and then I hop back and go for a D-blade. You can see that this was a little bit of a dangerous move as I took a bunch of damage from it, but I was able to recover from it. So if you are worried about that, you could instead just sit back and spam PB rockets at everything to take them down as well. Also, don't forget to grab the Praetor Suit Point since it's just a free one in the back here. Once you push up a little bit more, we're going to have a room with some zombies and a revenant that busts through the wall. If you sit all the way in the back of the room, you can actually take care of the zombies before the revenant, but I hit the trigger to spawn him and he popped up there, and at that point I got the challenge done for the mission to take out their crit points. Here I like to fire off a D-blade at the start of the fight into the Mancubus and take him out. A lot of the time the revenant will actually just be stacked on top of the Mancubus and you can get them both with the D-blade, but in this case I wasn't so lucky, so I just did a little lock-on burst on the revenant to finish him off. At this point, the next wave of enemies spawns after you take them out, and I like to sit up on this little scaffolding spot here, or whatever this platform is on the side of the building. It's a decent spot that's high up, but eventually you will start getting swarmed if you sit in one spot for too long, so I start making use of the aerial movement that we have in this game, and use the meat hook to get above the enemies. It's extra important to do that in here, because if you touch the ground in the goo, you're going to be stuck, and it's pretty hard to get out of it. Pretty much all you can do is try to use the meat hook to get a meat hook jump out, otherwise you're kind of just screwed if you land in the goo, so make sure you're avoiding it. Once you wait around this spot for a while, the Pinky's going to bust through the window and open up the next part of the level. And this is the next little combat area. This is one of the few combat arenas in the game where the regular zombies actually are required to progress the combat, so make sure you are taking out those guys as well, as they're not all infinitely respawning. That being said, with all the weapons that you have at your disposal now, you have a ton of options for taking on fights, and so pretty much anything I do here, you could do a little bit differently with a similar level of success. The thing you do want to watch out for is once you push up here, the first ever Cyber Mancubus is going to spawn in. I go for a stagger with the frag, and then use a blood punch and SSG to finish him off quickly, and then a Hell Knight drops on top of me, and he gives me a little bit of difficulty, but I'm able to get through him. If you leave one of the enemies up down here, you can meat hook up that ledge, and it's a bit of a safer approach here than walking up the stairs. But you'll see I use the meat hook to just immediately try to get high ground, because it's much safer than being on the bottom and being shot down upon by the enemies. Then you'll see I'm just making use of my aerial movement again, and looking for the heavies to take down first, because the heavies are generally what progresses the fight, and they're also generally the more scary enemies as well. This fight overall isn't too bad though, and if you really need to, you can always just go up to the very top levels of the room, and it's a relatively safe area as well. Once you finish off the fight, you'll see you get some combat points on the corruption meter, and you want to be careful because when you finish the fight also, imps will burst through this window once you're near it, but they won't until you are near it, so if you're already near it, then they'll just immediately burst through, and sometimes that can catch you off guard. You'll also see that we grabbed the Arbalest weapon mod, which is the last big weapon mod of the run that we need. Also, there is a Sentinel battery up here if you want to get it. But at this point, I'm not really that asked about it, and I'm not even going to go and grab any more Sentinel battery collectibles from the fortress anyway. But if you want to get those 2 extra Praetor Suit points that are still in the fortress for you, then you can do that with those. There's a nice D-blade spot here. All you have to do is freeze the Revenant in front of you, and then just fire a D-blade through the hallway, and that takes out this entire fight. Once you get up here, there is going to be a weapon mod to the right here if you want to grab it. But like I said, we already got the last important one anyway, so I'm just going to leave it and move on, because this is a bit of a minimal run. Once you jump across this gap, you'll get a room that is filled with a butt ton of fodder, and more will spawn in as you get farther, so you'll see that I kind of jump towards the end as soon as I can to spawn everything in, and then take them out using Splash. That said, this is a great place to fill up your armor and health, and you can see creating armor pools is a super effective strat, as I just let that guy hit me to demonstrate it for a while. After that, you jump over here and punch down the wall in this spot, and you can see that now that we have the weapon points, I'm going to go ahead and fully upgrade the Arbalest, as we're going to be using it in a little bit here soon. Once you come through the secret in here though, you'll have the Sentinel Crystal, and you can take what you like. Now that we have the Flame Chain going and the majority of the potential from Equipment Fiend going, we are spamming a ton of flame around and getting armor all the time, so I go ahead and grab another armor upgrade to max out our armor. Going in here, you are going to have a Revenant and a bunch of fodder that spawns in once you push up some. I kind of take a terrible approach here. A better idea would be to freeze them, back off, and just do a D-blade. or spam like rockets or like PB rockets or something to just splash everyone down, but I just do whatever I did in the room instead. Either way, I still leave it full armor, so it doesn't really matter. And now I'll show you how I do this little parkour section just so that you guys can kind of have an easier way of doing it if you want to. Basically, you just hook into here, and there's nothing in here for you on ultranightmare. But it's a nice spot where you can spawn in the imps to take them out. Then you can feed this guy a grenade, hop out, and then use a mixture of the meat hook and the ballista to just jump up there nice and quick, skipping some parkour. In this area, you have a couple of options for how you want to take everything on. You can actually just run past this if you want to, but I decided to just kill everything and ballista boost up instead. And we grab the Praetor suit point here just because it's free. At this point, you want to make sure you have a freeze bomb and enough ammo to do a destroyer blade, because we're going to do one in this little airplane here. If you don't have enough ammo to do a destroyer blade, you can just spam PB rockets instead to a similar effect, but the destroyer blade clears the entire hallway. Once you get up here, we're going to take out this mancubus with some PB rockets, and then we're going to be doing the fight in this little square room here. So it starts off with a carcass spawning in, and if you're trying to do the mission challenge, you'll probably need to get some kills on the fodder using the shield, but since we don't care about that, we're just going to progress the fight and take him out. Once you spend some time killing a little bit of fodder, you're going to have a Dread Knight and an Arachnotron spawn in, and if you want to, you can go for a D-Blade on them as they spawn in, which is a great way to kill them before they can be a threat. You'll see I go for that here, and because I have a big armor pool on the ground, all the damage I'm taking doesn't even matter. And doing that actually allowed me to kill these guys super quickly because they were heavily damaged by the D-Blade. Then once again, I'm lock-on bursting some more of the Prowlers for my mastery points, which also once again, very optional thing. And then we're continuing on with the fight, but once you do take out the Dread Knight and the Arachnotron, all you have is a couple of Prowlers and a bunch of fodder to take on, so the fight kind of gets easy from here. Once we finish this, we have some more mini combat encounters here. I like to just run past this group and then do a D-Blade on them all together. Just be aware that you have to jump a little bit to the right there to spawn in the imps as well as the Revenant. This spot would be good for the D-Blade, but once again the pinky control you sometimes. But in my case, I got lucky and was able to kill him with the D-Blade. Just bear in mind that he's got a high chance of survival against the D-Blade there. You could even go for another D-Blade here if you wanted to, but I like to just do some PB rockets and use the combat shotgun a bit on the fodder. The combat shotgun's only real use at this stage of the game is just taking out fodder, because it's a pretty nice splash gun. It's really good at taking out the enemies like that. And once we have more weapon points for the less important upgrades, we'll be upgrading our combat shotgun just for that. Anyway, you can see here we're just moving on, and for the most part it's just Revenants, fodder, and Hell Knights. And once we clear out this area, we are actually going to go back and do the secret challenge, I believe. But for now, since I forgot to go to it and take that detour, I just go ahead and clear out the rest of the combat in this area first. Once you push up here, a Hell Knight is going to spawn, so a great way to take him out is to just lock on burst him while he's jumping towards you. And now I'm going to traverse back towards that combat encounter. There's a secret encounter here that's pretty easy, so it's pretty much a free weapon point. Now that we have the Arbalest fully upgraded, we can take out this encounter super easily because it's basically just 2 flying enemies. Also, there's a free Praetor suit point here as well, so make sure to pick that up. With this, pretty much we're just going to turn around and start Arbalest spamming down these 2 enemies. I like to go for the Pain Elemental first just because they hurt more. And then if I get the chance, I actually do a style hook on the enemies as they're dying and finish off the Arachnotron like that. And then we can continue on to the next part. Going into this area, we're actually going to sit back on purpose because we're letting a cue ball get into position to kill a mancubus for us, that way we don't have to deal with him. So you can see I'm just taking my time here and letting these guys come towards me. Once I see the cue ball has walked out, I'll walk up and spawn in the mancubus, who will just get killed by the cue ball, no problem. If you rush in, the mancubus will spawn before the cue ball walks to that spot, and you won't be able to use it to kill him, so that's the only reason we're doing that. At this point, I recommend stacking up all you can before the next fight. If you could bring a triple chainsaw, that's great, but mostly just having your armor as high as you can because this room can be very scary. I like to drop in and go for a D-Blade, taking out as many mancubuses as I can. Most of the time it's just 2, or in my case I could just hit a wall, don't hit anything, and then screw up and go for a triple chainsaw on one instead. After that, I'll just use a lock-on burst because it does a similar amount of damage. And pretty much what we're trying to do is take out all of the heavy enemies we can before these snakes spawn in. So that's generally going to be the 2 mancubuses, this spider and a pinky. But once you see these snakes spawn in, you basically want to stop what you're doing and go pick up the berserk power-up. So I see them here, I stop what I'm doing, and I go and grab the power-up. Now I'm hopping back up, and we're basically just trying to be in a kill animation as much as possible. But to actually progress the encounter any, you'll have to be taking out the heavy demons. So make sure you're trying to do that as much as possible. And remember, you can can actually throw frag grenade equipments to get kills, and that counts to extend the duration of the power up for you. So that's super nice. If you just see a crowd of fodder, you can do that. Once you kill 4 snakes and a couple of prowlers, the Cybermank is going to spawn in, and at this point you've kind of done the minimal requirement to be able to get through this with relative ease. Once you do that though, you'll want to come towards the kitchen here, and you can take out the 2 mancubuses. And now you're just trying to get anything else that you might have left behind. Like in my case, I left behind this prowler, and the fight will end pretty soon from there. It's worth noting that I had 2 mancubuses there because I never spawned the initial one by approaching that wall. But if you approach that wall even at the very start of the fight, the mancubus is going to bust through, so I recommend trying to avoid that area. Once we're done here though, you can run up to this window, which a pinky will burst through, and we're going to do the pretty much only big skip in the entire run. So I'm going to clear out this area just to show it off, but you can actually just run past all these enemies and do the skip once you've practiced it some. So it's up to you how you want to perform it. Either way, there's not too many enemies out here, and especially compared to what we just went through, this is basically nothing. So I'm just going to finish off the combat, and then we'll get to the skip. So the goal of this is to land on the bridge down there where the tentacles are blocking the doorway, because they're not actually blocking it. You can just walk right through them. So there's basically 2 death walls to the left and the right, and all we need to do is thread ourselves between them with just 2 ballista shots like this and a double jump weaved in. You can also use the enemies and do a yeet hook to get here as well, so there's a lot of ways to do it. And you can also punch cancel if you know how to do that to do the shots even easier. Just practice this a couple of times, and it's not even a stressful thing in Ultra Nightmare because you don't die if you fall off the map anyway. But with that done, we're ready to do the final part of the level now. And this is the Marauder. I talked about tricks for them at the beginning of the video, so if you do want to see those, go watch that part of the video because I go into great detail about how to take on Marauders. But pretty much this guy's not too hard because he's just in a one-on-one with you, and you could just do your choice of SLOBs or PBSSG on him, just like you will with all of them. Overall, Marauders aren't really the most likely thing to kill you in Ultra Nightmare, because at this point you're kind of expected to be decent at the game already, and they really don't pose much of a challenge once you know how to take them on effectively. So I've gone ahead and jumped over to the next level here, just to keep the video as short as it reasonably can be. And this combat arena is actually easiest just run past, but I decided to pick up my dual lock mastery before getting out of here. Now that I have dual lock mastered, I can basically one cycle Marauders very consistently, and I'll show that off once we get to Taurus Nabad. Either way, you can pretty much just run past all this combat at the start, make use of the energy shield whenever you need to, and hop in the portal where we'll face our first Baron. The Baron can be easily taken out with just a big SLOB combo and a freeze bomb, or you can also use SSG PB on him as well if you prefer that, or even just do regular PB rockets. There's a ton of options to take them out, and this guy's basically on his own, so he's not much of a threat. Now we're ready to go to the outside arena. We're going to be putting Arbalist onto our Ballista, and that's the mod we're going to be using for the majority of this level. You'll see I stopped before this combat encounter to grab an upgrade for my frag grenade, and then we're ready to start the fight. And initially all you want to do is take out the fodder in this starting area, then you'll want to deal with the spider that pops up at the little ledge up ahead to the right. You can also leave these fodder if you want to instead, and you can deal with them later if you want to, but I like to take them out. You'll see I needed to grab a fuel because we want to have a triple chainsaw for an upcoming Cybermank, and we just style on him a little bit because it's a really fun level. You don't have to do any of that, you could just run past the enemies and use the chainsaw on him easily instead, but I just love doing that trick because it looks super cool. Either way, once you take him down, all you have left is this carcass, and then there's just fodder cleanup, and it's a very easy fight from there. So now we're going to move on to the next fight, and this is where we're meant to be introduced to the Pan Elemental, but we already saw one in the last level with the secret mission. So we could just take out these guys with splash of your choice, and then we're just going to do 2 Arbalist shots to take this guy down, because that's a very easy and consistent way to take them down. Once you do that, a Dread Knight is going to spawn, and you want to be ready for him because he spawns immediately after that Pain Elemental goes down. And immediately after the Dread Knight goes down, this Doom Hunter spawns in, and you'll want to just take him down, generally by using one of your grenade options, and then doing a Blood Punch and a Super Shotgun Blast, and finishing off his wagon, before taking him out with a Lock-On Burst after that. And then with him down, the rest of the fight is pretty easy, because it's just a bunch of fodder cleanup. In this area, you can use the meat hook to just run past all of the hazards in here, grab the Praetor Suit Point if you want it, and then we can hop up into the next little hallway, which has a Mancubus and a Prowler on it. But you only have to deal with the Mancubus if you're fast enough. So if you're trying to get another Praetor Suit Point, you want to pop off his arms, but just take him down with whatever weapons you like, and then rush to the end before the Prowler gets to you. This is where we're given the BFG, and you want to basically go here, wait till everything spawns in, and then fire off the BFG. You'll see I went for a chainsaw there, and if you time it properly, you can chainsaw him as soon as you fire the BFG, and it's just a nice little speed trick, but you don't have to do it. Now, I just do some ballista boosting to get through the parkour here. You could just go the intended route if you're not up to that though. And I'm just making my way towards the next big fight, which is going to have a buff totem that we're just going to rush immediately to take down. It's on the left side of the arena here, and you can get to it really quickly, especially since you start off up high. You can ballista boost in and get a ton of speed easily. This fight can be a little bit scary because basically what we're doing is waiting for a Mancubus to spawn, which indicates that we can use a BFG shot to finish off the fight. The Mancubus spawns after you've taken out 2 Cacodemons, so you want to be looking out for those Cacodemons and killing heavies until you see the Cacodemons. There are going to be a ton of demons starting to swarm the arena, but once you spawn in the Mancubus, you can fire off your BFG shot and the encounter will be finished, so just make good use of your aerial movement and you'll be able to get through here no problem. Once we're down here, we're going to head into the secret spot just because there is a free Praetor Suit Point, but if you don't care about it, then you could just take the normal way as well. We are going to be skipping this secret encounter because we don't need the weapon points anymore and it's just needless risk, and we can move on to the next part. This room is just some more intermittent combat, and there's nothing too scary in here, but you could still take a buttload of damage if you play it wrong, so just make sure you're ready for all the tentacles and stuff. After a little bit of time in this room, a guy's going to spawn up here that you can use the meat hook to jump up to, and you can either continue the level or come this way and grab the Praetor Suit Point if you like. Once we have it, I'll choose to just ballista boost back to where we were before so that I don't have to deal with all these tentacles. But first, I go for a little upgrade, just checking my Praetor Suit Points so that I can have a faster cooldown on my freeze bomb and officially have it maxed out, which is super nice. You can go in the secret here since we're not going to be grabbing it later. It just has some ammo and it will have a Sentinel armor for you if you're on ultranightmare. Now, I'm just going to skip a little bit of parkour, but you could just go the intended way. It's not too dangerous either way. But that's just such an easy ballista boost, you might as well do it, right? Now in this part, we're putting on the D-Blade because it is actually a speedrun strat here, but you don't have to do it at all if you don't want to. But if you kill everything really quickly, you can actually just not have a bunch of enemies spawn in here, which is super nice. But I end up failing the strat anyway. The idea though is to hit a D-Blade on both of these guys, fire a BFG, and then make the impact damage kill everything all at once. But if you're playing at lower frame rates like I am for this video, then the BFG isn't going to do enough damage to just one-shot all of the Barons. Just bear in mind that if you don't kill those Cacos before coming over here, they will chase you over and you will have to deal with them. So you can arbalist them before coming over here, especially if you have enough ammo for that already. Either way, this fight's not too tricky. Just make sure you don't forget to grab the BFG ammo on your way out. In this room, we have another Pain Elemental to deal with, and if you kill everything right as it spawns, you'll have a few less imps to deal with. But this fight isn't that hard anyways, so do whatever you like in here. Now we've got another parkour section, and once again I'm going to be skipping it with a little bit of movement tech, but you could just go the intended route if you're not comfortable doing that. There is a Praetor Suit Point to be gotten here if you want to get it, so you can pick up that, and then more importantly, make sure you're not forgetting about the BFG shot that spawns down on the platform right here with the floor traps. Also, you can go to this spot and do a ballista boost to get around the invisible wall, and it lets you skip even more parkour, which we love to do here. If you hop up here, you'll have a Sentinel battery, and I also think it's a safer way of getting past this combat because we're going to run past it. Then from here, we have the Sentinel Crystal, which I actually didn't go to because I thought I was going to fast travel to it, but we ended up not needing to do that. So you could just go and grab the last health upgrade at the Sentinel Crystal, and I'm actually going to come back and do that at the end of the level here anyway. So you can wait and see that before doing this level if you're not sure where it is. Either way, we've just got one more fight to do now, and we're going to do a specific BFG shot here to skip a couple of spawns. First though, we've got a Praetor Suit Point here if you want to get it, as well as a Sentinel battery back there that I hopped on if you're still looking for those. Basically the idea here is to BFG and then immediately jump through after firing it, and that's going to prevent a Baron from spawning because it's going to hit him while he's under the map and he'll fall out of bounds and die. At this point you'll have a Dread Knight spawn that you can very easily take out with a lock-on burst, and at this point in the fight, you're basically just taking out heavies until you see the Doom Hunter spawn. Once you do see the Doom Hunter spawn, you're going to go back to the spawn point and fire another BFG pretty much as close as you can to the first one, all the way across the map, and try to make it direct hit the Doom Hunter or just hit a wall behind him. And that's going to make this fight super easy. If the BFG doesn't just outright kill the Doom Hunter, it will strip him off of his wagon most of the time. If not, he's going to be left alone and he'll be an easy target no matter what. And that's this fight finished. And we're going to be leaving the level with 1 BFG shot. That's intentional because the next fight isn't really that difficult and you get some free BFG shots anyway, so we'll take advantage of those instead of using an ammo upgrade in this level. For now though, you could just get some Arbalest Mastery ticks on the Caco demons here, and then you could just progress towards the end of the level. Also, you'll see me do the fast travel to grab the crystal, so if you needed to see where that is, then you could see that here. But if you already did grab the Sentinel crystal when you were supposed to, then you'll be set to just end the level here and hop through the portal. And now I'm basically halfway through the next level just because there's no combat, and I was just doing that to show you guys where this Predator Suit point is, and then we're going to cut to the actual fight here. So the Gladiator fight is kind of a hard one before you know how to fight him, but once you get a couple of practice runs in, he's actually one of the easiest bosses there are, but he's still super satisfying to fight. Just be careful because whenever you're coming in here and it's not on a checkpoint, his first stun is actually going to immediately come out of it, so just be ready for that. After that, he'll have the full duration stuns, and we'll actually take advantage of that to just whoop his ass while he's stunned. Pretty much you're just waiting for green light attacks and trying to get a stun on him. You can see that I'm having a pretty hard time getting a stun on him, but we are still able to deal damage to him anyways. Once we do get a stun, however, he ends up in this glory kill state where you can do a punch on him and get a little bit of damage, but you are actually able to deal damage to him in this state, just at a diminished rate. So if you have Dazed and Confused on, you get a ton of time to just wail on him while he's stuck in that state, and it makes it so that you have to spend less time actually fighting him, and more time just shooting an immobile meat wall. Also, you'll see I used the BFG shot there once he spawned in the bigger demons, and I aimed it so that it would go behind his shield, because if you direct hit his shield, he will absorb the shot. Then you can see once again we get a stun, and I'm just wailing on him some more, and he's going to go down pretty soon now. So the first phase of the fight, as you can see, isn't very dangerous. This was a pretty bad version for me, and it still just wasn't even that scary. Didn't even break my armor. However, the second phase of the fight is quite a bit more dangerous, but you can also do it a lot faster, and I would recommend being able to do the second phase of the fight kind of quickly, just because if you can get it in before the jump rope attack, that's probably the scariest attack there is because it limits your movement. Either way, at the beginning of the fight, he always does this attack. What you'll want to do is make some distance from him so that he does a green light attack, and then you'll get a stun and you can wail on him some more. You do want to be careful of his spinning attack though. Basically, if you're far from him, he'll give you a green light after he's done spinning his mace, but if you're close to him while he's spinning his mace, he's going to do a non-green light attack that almost always hits you, and basically the only counter is to use your energy shield to block it. Which is something you want to bear in mind. The energy shield is great on this boss. If you know you're not going to be able to dodge an attack, whip that out and just put up the energy shield. That way he doesn't get damage on you. At this point though, we're basically just going back and forth between PB Rocket or PB Ballista, and then whenever he spawns in reinforcements that contain heavy demons, I'm going to be using the BFG behind him just like before. And you should have also saw an example of me using the energy shield effectively before the BFG shot there. You can also use chainsaw animations to tank his attacks as well if you need to. And now that I've spawned in the second wave of reinforcements, I fire off another BFG, and the fight is almost done without jump ropes. But I decided to actually wait around just to demonstrate to you guys jump ropes instead of killing him. Pretty much, if you're not comfortable doing combos while you're doing the jump ropes, just focus on the jump ropes, it's no big deal, and get ready to get the stun after the fourth set of ropes. Either way, this boss fight isn't too bad once you get used to his attacks, just practice it a little bit in regular Nightmare. Also, something I forgot to mention during the fight is that between the phases and after doing his second phase, you were given all your ammo including your BFG back, which is why I was able to make use of it as much as I did. Now we're back in the fortress, and before doing the fight, I decided to upgrade my energy shield just because it is kind of nice to have those upgrades, but they're not the most important things. Obviously, being able to use the shield more often is good, and the falter thing is actually pretty helpful on some enemies that I'll show off later. Either way, this fight is super easy, it's nothing but fodder, so you could just spam combat shotgun or PB rockets, it's kind of up to you. And you'll see I do this silly movement and then just get absolutely bamboozled by this one fodder enemy for like half my ammo. But yeah, with this combat out of the way, we can go ahead and move on to Taurus Nabad. So this level is what I would consider to be the start of the endgame, as we are given our last weapon, and we are introduced to probably the worst enemy of the game in my opinion. Also, you can hop down here and do that secret for a Sentinel battery, but at this point I'm basically running past all the collectibles because I don't care. You'll see I go for a Rolcon burst on the Hell Knight, and then I chainsaw this guy after the fact. If I did it in the other order, then I'd have less rockets for the Marauder, so that's why I do it that way. Either way, this fight, I'll give you guys an area that gives you space to fight the Marauder easily, but I'm probably just going to one-cycle him because I like doing that. Pretty much, just Arbalest that guy, kill this zombie, and then run back here, and you've got a nice open spot to take down the Marauder. And yeah, he doesn't stand a chance against the SLOB. If you can't do that though, running back to this spot gives you enough space to just do a full fight with him anyway. But if the zombies do eventually catch up, just take a break and kill them, and then go back to your one-on-one with the Marauder. Now we just have a little bit of parkour, but there's some enemies in the way, so I'll go ahead and show you how I deal with them, but this should be no problem for you at this point. I am going to go for a chainsaw on one of the enemies here, just because it's nice to be loaded up on ammo before the next fight, especially rockets. You want to have at least 6 rockets going into the next fight. Also, you've got a Praetor suit point if you're still going for any upgrades, so you can grab that, and then we'll go ahead and be introduced to Archviles here. But first I stop and upgrade my frag grenade, just to have the last few upgrades that are kind of convenient to me. So this arena, what you want to do is rush towards the back here as much as you can. I actually purposely didn't do any B-hops just so that I could do something that console could repeat as well. Just ballista boost your way all the way over here, as this is a very good spot to see where the Archvile spawns. And the Archvile, for ultranightmare, you want to know every single spawn point for every single Archvile. And I'll be showing you those during this run. And one of them is right there, and I'll show you the rest here after I finish the fight. But as long as you spawn trap the Archvile, this will be a very short combat encounter. So the Archvile has 3 spawn points in this arena. The first one is obviously the one where I fought him there. You've got one to the left side instead on the other side. And then there is a third spot all the way across over there, which is actually the best spot if you can get it, because we have a spare BFG shot for this mission, and you can just shoot a BFG shot over there no problem. You'll see I also kind of naturally went for the secret encounter there just because I'm used to doing it in the speedrun, but we don't need it. I just wanted to press the button here to get the mastery token. That way we can actually get our combat shotgun mastered, which is kind of a nice thing to have. So I'm just going to finish up in this area, just doing a little bit of movement to grab the collectibles that I care for, and then I'll show you guys a little bit of a skip with the water so that you don't have to deal with this puzzle. Basically, the PB will pierce through everything as long as you're shooting it through water or an enemy. So if you shoot the right spot with the PB, it will set off these things and you don't have to interact with the water puzzles here. Also, you see I was a goober and forgot to grab the rad suit, so make sure you don't do that like I did. That said, it still wasn't that big of a deal for me, so I'll just be able to live without the rad suit, and it's not going to be the end of the world. This area has a couple of enemies. The Pinky can do a bunch of damage to you if you let him, so just make sure you use like a freeze bomb or something to stagger him, and then you can take out these guys as you see fit, or even just run past them because they're not required and they don't give any combat experience. Now we're moving into a BFG arena here. The last one was optional to use the BFG, but here you are going to be using the BFG no matter what. Basically, you just want to hop over to the right side here. You can just come over here normally if you like. I'm just used to ballista boosting. And then you want to fire a BFG shot approximately there. You want to aim it a little bit higher than I did here. You'll see that I left up a Caco Demon, but if you've fired the BFG shot properly, it will take out everything in the entire arena, and it will also dethrone the Doom Hunter if you do it really well. Either way, this combat will go by super quickly if you do the BFG, and there's a bunch of scary demons that you'll have to deal with if you don't use a BFG in here. Now we have the next water puzzle, and once again you can just go into the corner and shoot a PB shot to trigger the door. You'll hear a little sound cue when it went off, and then you can look down and see if it opened. And you can swim on through without having to deal with the puzzle once again. You'll just climb out of the water somehow, don't question how it works. And now we're going to use the Destroyer Blade for the start of this fight. Basically you want to just hop over to the left with the Destroyer Blade ready, and you can take out the Hell Knight and whatever demon was back there. I always do that, so I don't even know what the demon is, but he fucking dies, so that's pretty cool. Now we're going to be holding on to our BFG until we get another Archvile. So we're going to kill heavies until a Baron spawns, and then we're going to try to kill the Baron as soon as we can, because killing the Baron is what spawns the Archvile. And then we'll shoot the BFG at the Archvile. So if you have a freeze bomb or just a frag grenade to use on this guy, you can use it. Just make sure that you have either a frag or a freeze for the Archvile as a backup in case your BFG shot doesn't end up killing him. Especially if you're at lower frame rates, the BFG can have issues with consistency on killing the Archvile. He can spawn in one of 3 spots in here. He'll spawn next to one of those 2 portals, or behind me here, which is what he did to me. Normally he won't spawn back here, but I was standing a little bit too far up and he was able to spawn there. Either way, you can finish off this fight and we'll be ready to move on. Also, I decided to do this Marauder secret encounter just so that you guys can see some more Marauder gaming, and he actually kind of kicked my ass a little bit, but it wasn't that big of a deal. And I did decide to use the PB SSG just so that you guys could see a little bit more of that. Obviously, in your run, you probably shouldn't do this because it's just pointless risk, but I thought I'd just show you guys in case you wanted to see some more Marauder gameplay. Either way, we can move on to this part, and we're going to be using another BFG in this fight because it is once again another scary one, and there is so much BFG ammo in the later half of the game that you could use a BFG on almost every serious combat encounter in the entire game after you unlock it. So we just trigger the cutscene here, and what we're going to do is hop up on the ledge on the right here after spawning this guy in. And we're just going to fire a BFG off into the sky, and this is going to kill all of the heavies and trigger the Marauder to spawn. The Marauder will spawn after you've killed like half of the heavies, so if you don't use the BFG here, then you're going to have to deal with both at once. You'll see I almost got killed here, so I'll just let you guys see how I recover from that, but pretty much you can kite the Marauder pretty effectively here using the jump pad and just verticality in general, and it's not too bad to take him on. The only real issue is that there's not a lot of flat ground for you to actually do the fight on, so I decided to just use the stairs here, but you've also got that flat area under the floating thing as well. Do whatever you like, and then we'll be ready to move on to the next part, which we are going to run past just because it is the safest way to do it. So there's two combat things that we're going to run past here. For starters, they don't give you any combat experience, and there's nothing stopping you from just running through it, so that's exactly what we're going to do. Also, the second one here is a scary spot in the speedrun normally, but in this one we're actually going to run straight past it and then come back for the collectibles later, just because that makes more sense for our BFG ammo, and it will also despawn all the enemies, so you don't have to grab collectibles while you're getting your ass kicked by a bunch of heavy demons. This is the second part now. The first part you barely even got to see if you took the proper path to run past it. And once again here, you can actually just use a meat hook on this guy and get really far away from them before most of the demons can even spawn. If you're not able to do that though, just make use of your chain gun and run away as fast as you can, and you still shouldn't have any issues. Also, just in case you guys are interested in this, instead of watching a cutscene for the grav lifts, you could just do a dash boost on this part of the mouth on this guy's skull, and it'll actually let you just boost straight up here. That way you don't have to watch the cutscene for the grav lifts, which, you know, just takes a bunch of time of staring at nothing that you care about. Once you get to the drop down, you want to try and hug this wall and land on this thing, but I ended up falling off of it, but it's no big deal. All you have to do is slap this box and it'll float up for you. Then you can jump onto the climbable wall and get onto the spot where we're trying to go to just shoot the thing without doing the water puzzle. Pretty much you just back up into the corner here and shoot under that corner and you'll set off the wall, no problem. This will let you skip a tiny little combat encounter, which isn't really a big deal if you're not able to do it, but there's no reason to do it, it doesn't give you rating anyway. This fight I kind of screw up because I'm used to having a triple chainsaw here, and I thought I did just because of that, so I played way too cocky and had absolutely no plan for the Dread Knight because of that. Obviously you should take a little bit more of a conservative approach here instead, maybe freeze everything, do a blood punch, maybe toss in a frag as well, and just blow up everything with splash. That's definitely the smart way to take this out. But this combat encounter fortunately isn't too scary, there's not a ton of enemies in it, and I was able to recover from the screw up anyway. So with that done, we can go ahead and move on to the final fight of the level now. Also, there's a mastery token here if you want another one, but I pretty much only want the one for my combat shotgun for this run anyway. Once you get in here, I recommend using an arbalist on this Kako, and you can be very generous with your uses of the Crucible on the enemies in here. I highly recommend at a bare minimum doing all the Barons, the Archvile, and the Dread Knights using the sword, but that still leaves you with 3 or 4 that you can use on whatever heavies you want to, like the snakes, the pain elementals, or just anything that scares you. Remember, getting a kill with the Crucible gives you a bunch of health, so it's a great way to recover from taking a bunch of damage in this fight. We also have a spare BFG shot here, so I decided to just use it here, although I don't have a super optimized time to use it like I do normally, because this one isn't in the speedrun and I'm not used to using it. Either way, we're going to run back and get an ammo crystal, so if you do have the extra BFG shot, you can use it here, but you might have used it on the Archvile in the initial fight if you needed that. Either way, before you finish off the level, make sure you fast travel back to the crystal and pick up the BFG ammo. Also, there is a Praetor suit point here you can grab as well that I'll show you, but you can see all the enemies are gone from here now, so it's totally safe to grab all the things here, instead of having to worry about getting destroyed by the Pain Elemental, the Pinky, and all the other enemies that are swarming you. And now we're on to Nekravol, which is the final chapter of the game. It's the last 4 levels, and the Nekravols are kind of short levels. So I like to just basically run past this fight just because there's no need to do it. You can just make use of the meat hook to hop up here really quickly, and this fight as well you can just run past. So we got a pretty fast start going on here. You also have a bunch of supplies here if you need them, but I was already pretty much full armor, so I just moved on. And this is the introduction to the last enemy of the game, the Tyrant. They're basically just giant meat shields, but really they're not that dangerous. The Archviles are way more scary, and the Barons are way more aggressive, so between that and us having the quad damage in this fight, this is basically nothing. Just go around, tear everything up with the quad damage. It's a little bit of a power trip. Just make sure that you're trying to hold on to your triple chainsaw as best you can, although bear in mind there is a fuel there, and there's another fuel before we need it. Once you press the button down here, you want to be ready for the Baron to spawn, and we're just going to use our Crucible on them because we have extra charges we can use them on. Then you've got some fodder that comes out of here, but instead of just insta-killing all of them, I go for a chainsaw to stack up, and then I'm going to use the meat hook to run past the little parkour bit in this room. There's an invisible wall, but if you go to this side of it, you can just get around it. Then if you want the combat rating from this room, make sure you clean up the fodder before leaving, but there's nothing stopping you from just leaving anyway, so do whatever you like. And now we have the Kali boss fight, which isn't too hard, and since we have the triple chainsaw, we'll be able to take care of the scarier pain elemental. Basically, to take this out though, all you have to do is fire an arbalist shot followed up by a rocket, and they'll go down really quickly for you. If you have the opportunity to take down all 4 before the pain elemental becomes a problem, feel free, but you can also take a break after the 3rd one and then go for him instead, especially if you get worse RNG and you don't have a great pattern for taking them out as quickly as I did here. Either way, we can move on from the fight here now, but there is a Predator suit point back here if you still want those. Then we can go into the little crusher room. But before we go, I stop into a couple of upgrades. I go ahead and just grab the precision bolt mastery because we have the extra points for it. But it is a very optional upgrade. It's not an amazing upgrade to have. The base weapon is the best part about it for sure. But that was the last important upgrade I had to get. So now I don't really need any more Predator suit points. In the crusher room here, something that you can do if you ever need to is to pull out the chain gun, and you can put up the energy shield, and if you crush yourself you won't take any damage, but it'll kill all the enemies around you, which is a pretty nice way of taking them out. Either way, you could just run through this encounter if you want, or kill everything and move on. Either way, we're ready to move on to the next fight, where we're going to use our first BFG of the level. This is also going to be an archvile spot, so once again I'll show you where these spawns are and when you can expect it to spawn, because as always you want to just spawn trap that motherfucker because they are terrifying. This fight you start off by taking out a Dread Knight, and then you'll have the next wave of heavies spawn in, and once you kill them you're watching out for a Caco Demon and a Cyber Mancubus. Once you see either of those enemies, that's your indicator to fire off a BFG shot in the room, and that's going to clear out everything up until the archvile. Just be careful of the snake because they're always a scary enemy. Once you fire off the BFG shot, you're going to be looking for an archvile spawn. There are 2 spawns upstairs, which is where we are now, and there are 2 spawns downstairs as well. Be listening for the archvile, and if you hear him downstairs, head towards him there. Just hit him with a freeze and a double lock-on burst, and he'll go down nice and fast. Unfortunately, there isn't a great backup strat if you aren't able to kill the archvile quickly. If he spawns stuff in, you're gonna just have to improvise and take out the enemies, which gets tricky because he's going to keep spawning stuff in while you're dealing with the shit that he's already spawned. So this is a fight I would recommend practicing, but once you get it down, you'll get it down every single time, and there's basically no chance of failure. Once you're out of here, you can clear out these enemies or just run past them. I'm used to running past them, but you can also just fight them like I am here, and I'll show that off just in case you guys want some inspiration for how to take them on. Once you come out to this area, you can go under the crusher here, and there is a secret room with a mastery token you can grab if you care for that. Then we're ready to go into this room where we're going to crush the totem and then use a BFG shot. This room isn't really that scary and it doesn't require a BFG shot, we just have an extra one so we might as well use it. So just use the meat hook to hop up to the totem immediately, use the BFG shot, and then we can go ahead and press the buttons to open up the door to the final fight. I like to just use a ballista boost there instead of dealing with the scary spiked wall that can just kill you sometimes. And from here, we can move on to the Marauder fight, where we actually have such a big excess of BFG ammo that we are going to use one on the Marauder here just because we can. To do that, all you have to do is stun him and then BFG directly in his face. You'll see that I ended up missing it and had to finish him off manually, but if you hit him in the face, he will die every single time to that. This was actually kind of close for me because I screwed it up so bad though, so I'll let you see how I recovered. And with him down, the door opens, and we can go ahead and press the button up here to move on to the next fight. So in this fight, you're going to have a BFG shot for, and you can use up all your BFG ammo in here if you happen to have an extra for whatever reason. And there isn't really an exact time that I would consider the best to do it, although a really nice time is once the Doom Hunters spawn in, you can fire it right between them and it will do heavy damage to both of them right as they spawn. That being said, if you're scared of these heavies at the start, you could just fire it at the start of the fight as well, and you'll also get some decent value out of it. It's kind of up to you what you want to do. I believe that I decided to save it for a little bit later into the fight though, just because these guys aren't too scary. Either way, now that we're in the late game and there's so much variety to the ways that you can handle fights, that I don't just have one set in stone plan for all of the enemies here. There is plenty of improvisation that can be done and none of it is really that scary, but in general, just make use of all of your equipment as much as you can and stay up in the air, which is the safest place in this game. Also, you want to just keep your head on a swivel as always, because the demons do like to try to sneak up behind you and there's no radar or anything to indicate when they're back there. Once these dudes do spawn in though, I'm going to go ahead and go for my BFG shot. And that's pretty much all I have about this combat encounter. There's not much to it. I will say that you can actually skip this entire combat encounter if you just do a meat hook towards the end of the level trigger. And I'll actually show you also how to get up there with a dash boost later on. And there's nothing stopping you from hitting the end level trigger before you finish this combat. So if you want to do that, you can. I'll show you the tricks to get up there anyway, because even if you do finish the combat, I recommend doing the skip that I show here, just because it lets you get past a bunch of spooky traps that are kind of annoying to navigate. So an easy way to get up to the spot that I'm showing you would just be to use a meat hook on one of the remaining enemies, but I go ahead and pick them off and elect to just show you guys a dash boost spot instead. Pretty much you just want to line up near this pillar and then do a dash into it, and you'll get launched up and you can go into the spot to the left up in the little window up above. Doing this lets you get past a bunch of traps, and they can be kind of annoying. And to be honest, I don't even know how to get past them effectively because I just skip them every time now. So yeah, you could just come back here, punch the statue, and if you're fast, you can actually pull up the menu and fast travel, and that'll let you skip this little cutscene, which is kind of helpful. But don't forget that we're trying to fast travel out of here, which is the main reason I completed the combat, because we want to grab the ammo crystal. Moving into Nekravol 2, we have a couple of fodders in our way before we hit the cutscene here, which is going to spawn in a pain elemental in a moment. I go for a little destroyer blade just to take out everything on the bridge, but you could also clean them up pretty easily just using something like the PB instead. Once we push up, there's going to be a pain elemental spawn, but we actually have a BFG routed here, so what you can actually do is just climb over here, run past this, and once you hit this climbable wall, you can fire off a BFG and it will take out the entire room. If you fire it while next to the door instead of where I did, you'll also kill a bunch of enemies in here for some extra value as well. This is going to be a required fight, but it is a pretty small one. You just have a couple of the easier heavy enemies to deal with, namely a Carcass, a Revenant, and a Snake a little bit later on into the fight, so just make sure you're ready for him to show up. There's going to be a Crucible left over in this room, and this is going to allow us to actually use our Crucible once in the next fight, alongside a BFG shot that we have, before coming back here after the fight and picking up the Crystal and the Crucible. Right here, I go for a convenient triple chainsaw on the Mancubus, but you could also wait and save it for a later heavy. Then, once you take down the Revenant, the rest of the fight will kick off. I believe you're going to have some Pain Elementals, and then after them a Baron, and then after the Baron a bunch of Snakes as well as a Doom Hunter. I like to save the BFG for the Snakes and Doom Hunter, and then use the Speed Boost on the Baron. So you'll see me pick it up here after taking out that initial set of enemies and spawning in the Baron. And of course, hasted up lock-on burst will take this guy down no problem. And it looks like the Pain Elemental actually spawns with or after the Baron, and I even had some extra lock-on burst, so I just kept firing them at the snakes. Then I shoot my BFG shot across the map, hit the Doom Hunter with the splash, and the room is pretty much finished now. So with the room done, you'll see that I didn't ever use my Crucible, but you absolutely can use the Crucible in here. If you wanted to, you could even use the Crucible on the Baron, which is probably the best enemy, or you could just save the Crucible for later, or just not even use it. It's not really needed, and we have not really all that many scary enemies in this level, so do what you will with it. You can always fast travel back to it later though if you want to take it after using it on a different enemy, like maybe an Archvile, or even the Tyrant at the end of the level. It's kind of up to you how you want to use it, but it's just convenient since we go back and grab the ammo crystal for the BFG shots. This room, we're going to be using another BFG shot right off the spot. You just fire it through the middle of this room. You want to be careful not to have it directly aimed at the Arachnotron, or sometimes it will hit him and end the BFG shot. But doing this progresses the fight to the Archvile, who you can just do a freeze and lock-on burst. He could spawn up top here, or on some of the sides, so just make sure you're watching out for him. But you want to just spawn trap him as soon as you can. And once you take out the Archvile, you'll have a Marauder to deal with. There's not a lot of other enemies as long as you take out the Archvile quickly, so the Marauder ends up not being too much of an issue. And once you've made it up the elevator, we'll come out to this area. You do want to be careful here because these spiked gates will hurt you very bad, like they could just damage tick you constantly. And they are definitely a way to lose an ultranightmare run. So if you want to be safe, you can pull out your energy shield while you're near them, that way you can block their damage with that. But otherwise, just be safe and do your timing properly. Now we're into this elevator room. And there is a little skip you can do here to skip some very optional combat. And it's kind of nice because it's in a confined space. All you have to do is ballista boost up onto the monkey bar here, hit the climbable wall, and then it's pretty much just like you did a little bit of extra parkour. Just do your best not to fall down. Once you get up here, you can either watch the cutscene, or if you stay really close to the ledge, you can just fall down where a death barrier has spawned and you'll skip it. Either way, once you're up here, you want to be kind of careful of the enemies because they can catch you off guard while you're focusing on the eyes that you have to shoot here. But just make sure that the enemies are down and then take them down with your weapons as you see fit. The Arbalist is still super good on these, but you don't really need to optimize for them. You'll also see me use a Crucible here because we're about to get one back, and I think it's a nice area to use a Crucible with it being such a cramped space and having a Dread Knight. But obviously I could have just used a Frag or a Freeze Grenade and a Lock-on Burst instead, and it would have been no big deal. Once you get to the top of the elevator, you can do a freeze bomb trick like I just did here to not have to deal with the tyrant, and then from there you can run off to the side and fire off a BFG shot to clear out a huge chunk of the arena. However, if you did end up failing that trick because it's a little bit difficult to do, I'll go ahead and show you just dealing with the tyrant without doing that. Pretty much it's a similar setup, but we're just going to kill the tyrant manually first, which isn't too bad all things considered. I just do a SLOB, I run out of ammo, and then I just do a freeze and PBSSG him the rest of the way down, and he'll go down no problem. After that, we could do the same thing, but you do want to kill the tyrant first because if he's not down, then you won't have additional enemies that spawn in and get insta-killed by the BFG. By having him down already, some more enemies will actually spawn in while the BFG is traveling, and we'll get even more kills than if you left him up. After you do this, you're going to have some Barons to deal with, and once the Baron goes down, and a couple of Caco Demons as well, I believe, you'll have a Doom Hunter in your way, and that'll be the end of the fight. Just make sure that you don't forget to grab the BFG ammo on your way out. Also, if you do still care about it, there is a secret here you can grab in the middle. There is a Predator Suit point down there, and you just have to go in that room to grab it. But at this point, I have all the upgrades I want, so we're ready to move on to Urdak. And I've gone ahead and cut to the first fight because there's some long parkour at the start. And this fight is actually skippable, however it does get combat rating, and it can be a little bit of a difficult skip. So I'll show you the skip if you want to do it. Pretty much you just do 2 ballista shots off the grab lift here, and you could just climb up and leave if you want to. But I'm going to stay and do the fight so that way you guys can see how to do it, in case you're not somebody who wants to skip this. So this fight is kind of weird because a lot of it is actually just on a timer, which basically means you have to do a bunch of waiting. What we're looking for though is the final wave of the fight to spawn in, and once that spawns in then you want to fire off a BFG shot. So for now you could just keep on killing heavies as you see them. Just of course be wary especially of the Cyber Macubuses since that's one of the few attacks that can go through the energy shield. And you'll see I'm just making good use of my meat hook staying up in the air, and part of that is also just so that I have a good angle for the BFG shot. You want to be as far back as you can so that way you can get as much distance on the shot so that you get the maximum tendril damage possible. Once I see all these guys spawn in, I know that it's time to fire, and I go ahead and shoot it off, clearing the encounter. Now, if you're either skipping this encounter or you feel comfortable doing it without the BFG, there is a fight that we are now lacking a BFG for later on in the fight that would also be good to have a BFG. So I would recommend you guys watch this whole level through before going through the level yourself. That way you could decide in your route what you want to do and which fight you consider to be the scariest. Either way, we've got some time before we get there, so for now I'm just going to make my way through the parkour. And also you'll see me just skipping these zombies, but obviously you should stack up your armor and ammo on them if you're trying to be safe. Now we're headed into a room that has some more optional combat. Once again, this is also rated combat, but it's very easy to skip past, so you could just do that if you like. Or you can kill everything and then set yourself up to get the combat rating as you're leaving. But basically what you want to do is use one of these flying enemies as a meat hook target, so that way you don't have to deal with the intended route. But if you're scared of them, you can also just kill them all and go the intended way as well. It's ultimately up to you what you want to do. I just decide to do whatever you want to call this, and it works out for me, I guess. So yeah, now we're leaving that fight, and we're going to be moving on to a fight which has a buff totem in it. This room can be a little bit scary because we don't have a BFG for it, but ultimately there are scarier rooms a little bit later in the level, so this shouldn't be too bad. Once again, you have plenty of space, so just make use of your meat hook to stay up in the air, and you should have no problem taking everything down. At this stage of the game, we now have our entire arsenal, and the game is honestly easier than it was in the early game, even despite the ramp up in the power of the demons. but having stuff like all the Sentinel crystal upgrades is a huge help in that. Be careful, since once you kill enough heavy demons, this Doom Hunter is going to spawn, and I believe either once you kill the Doom Hunter or once you start getting him low, a Dread Knight is going to spawn as well, so make sure you're watching out for him. And with the fight done, I go ahead and just hop up and press the button, and I'm going to go through this room and do something a little bit silly. If you're super fast, you could just run through this door ignoring all of the enemies, but I decided to just Crucible this Baron instead just to be done with it. However, if you're being smart, you wouldn't use your Crucible here, obviously. This is just where you use it in the speedrun, so I'm used to using it. There is actually a much better spot to use your Crucible later in the level, so I'll show you where that is. So now we're approaching a Marauder fight, but you actually have to clear out a specific demon before it starts, so we're going to leave him up for last, so that way we can clear out the whole arena. So to delay the Marauder spawn, all you have to do is not kill the Revenant. This will let you go and take out all of the soldiers and the mecha zombies. However, it's important to remember that the mecha zombies are going to keep respawning, so mostly you just want to take out the soldiers. Once you're ready for the Marauder to spawn though, you can go ahead and take out the Revenant and start the fight. He's going to spawn right in the spot I just went over next to that door. So I just do one more sweep looking around for any fodder I might have missed, and then I go find the Revenant and take him out to start the fight. So once you're done in there, you'll want to watch out for a couple of Cacos that spawn in. I like to just take them out with the Arbalest, and it's also around this time that I end up getting the instant salvo unlocked, which is a very nice mastery for taking on pain elementals a little bit easier. I definitely made that Yeet hook. So getting into this fight, this is a super easy Archvile fight because he doesn't spawn in until a little bit later, and he only has one spawn in location. So you could just take care of any enemies that are concerning you, grab the BFG ammo, and then you'll just want to hit this guy with the freeze and double lock on burst combo, and he'll go down immediately. After you take care of him, there's once again another timer before a Mancubus and a Pain Elemental spawn in, so I recommend just trying to get up onto the high ground to deal with them. The Mancubus spawns up top, and obviously the Pain Elemental is flying, so he will be up high as well, and being down below them can be a little bit scary. And with that fight done, we're going to head towards the first of the ring activation fights that we have to do. I decided to take the left one first, but it doesn't really matter which one you do first. And at this point, if you did save your BFG in that first initial fight, then you'll be able to use a BFG on both of these fights. However, if you didn't, then you'll have to pick one to use your BFG on. You can use it either in this fight or the next one that's coming up, and I'll let you guys decide when you want to do it. That being said, I do think that the next fight after this one is harder than this one. However, this one the enemies clump up really hard, so it's kind of up to you what you want to do. What I would suggest doing is using your Crucible on one of the fights and your BFG in the other. So for example, you could just Crucible down this Tyrant, and then use your BFG in the next fight. This fight isn't too bad though. After this wave of enemies that you just saw spawn in, that's actually the last wave and everything is now on the field. So just keep making use of that Flame Belch and the Meat Hook Chain to maintain your armor and also your movement. And just like any other, you should have no problem with this fight once you get it down. So I cut out a bunch of the parkour after that fight, and we're moving on to the next one now. And this fight is actually at a larger scale than the last one, but the enemies are much more paced out than that one, where that one just threw them at you all at once. So whichever one you consider to be harder, you can use your BFG shot on, or again, if you saved your BFG shot in the first fight, then you can use the second one here and the first one there. These are easily the scariest fights of the level though. That being said, there's only 2 BFG pickups in this entire map, so we only get to use 2 of them, because we need to start off with 2 shots going into Final Sin. That's kind of important. This fight starts off pretty slowly though, and then once you start seeing the demons spawn, things will pick up pretty quickly. When you want to use your BFG, I would recommend waiting until you see a Baron, and once you find him, I would go for a long distance direct hit or splashing it next to him. That way you could take out as many things as you can all at once. You can see for now, I'm kind of just slowly picking things down while I'm waiting for a Baron to spawn in, basically just trying to hit the amount of heavy demons killed needed in order to spawn him in. But I'll go ahead and just let this fight play out for you guys because there really isn't too much to it. You'll see I actually went for the tendril damage on him instead and just shot him while he was stunned by it. You could do that as well, just bear in mind that the Barons and Tyrants take much less damage from BFG shot tendrils than most other enemies do. Either way, once you fire off your BFG there's going to be a bit of a pause before more enemies spawn in, and at this point we're on to the second half of the fight. If you didn't use your sword in the last fight, you can absolutely use it on one of the Barons in here, since there is a sword pickup. But in my case, I ended up just picking it up since I used it on that Baron that was completely on his own, like an idiot. But with these guys taken care of, that's the end of the fight, and that's actually the last big fight before the boss. So now we're on the final stretch before the Con Maker, and I thought I'd just show you guys me running past this part because there are a couple of heavy demons that could get you. But if you just make use of the meat hook or the ballista, you can just run past them and not have to deal with them, and they don't give any combat ratings, so it doesn't matter. At this point, I'm just trying to do the cool speedrun strat here, but you obviously don't have to do that. It doesn't actually do anything to make the run safer, and I fail it anyway, so it doesn't matter. Either way, with this puzzle done, we're ready to do the Con Maker now. So this is the Con Maker, and she has the same critical weakness as basically every enemy in this game, and that is just being in the air. She literally just can't do anything to you if you're in the air. So make good use of your meat hook to stay in the air and avoid the attacks, and all you have to do is hit a double or triple lock-on burst on her, and her shield will go down, opening her up to the meat hook for you. You can see I go for slobs here when I can, but sometimes I miss them, but it's not the end of the world anyway. This fight is super easy, there's not really a lot to it. Just make sure you grab the BFG ammo during the fight like I did before you finish her off. Otherwise you'll go into Icon of Sin short one, and you know, that would suck. So now we're on to the final level of the game, and if you've made it this far, you have everything you need to finish off the game on Ultra Nightmare. There really aren't any new challenges in this, and given that basically every fight in this level can be made very easy using a BFG shot, as long as you follow the route that I have set out for you, you should have no problems here. The BFG route in this level is basically exactly the same as it is in the speedrun, since at this point in the game, going fast really is the best way to also stay alive. So right now we're just clearing out a couple of the introductory demons, and then once you see some more guys spawn in, it's actually these armored fellas and then a couple more guys spawning in. You can go ahead and fire off your BFG. I manually killed that guy like a goober just because I didn't realize that I was supposed to BFG, but eventually I catch up and fire it off. And firing off the BFG here is essentially going to progress the fight towards a pain elemental spawning here pretty soon. You'll also see that I stared straight down while the BFG was traveling because that increases your frame rate, which also increases the damage of the BFG tendrils. In this instance, it would have been better for me to fire the BFG off the side of the map instead of into the wall at the other side, but since I didn't, I have a couple of extra heavies to clean up here before that pain elemental spawns, who we've been saving a triple chainsaw for. So roll up, give him the triple chainsaw, and if you needed ammo earlier, there is a fuel sitting in this area, so you could chainsaw a small demon and then come back and grab the fuel before the pain elemental if you need it. Otherwise, the rest of the fight goes by pretty easily now. We're just clearing out some more of the demons before we see the checkpoint get, which indicates that we're about to face a tyrant who's going to bust through the wall. You can see we got the checkpoint there, so now I know that the tyrant is coming, and all we're going to do is toss a frag on him, and then hit him with the crucible. The reason we toss a frag is because he comes out with some zombies, and you wouldn't want to accidentally crucible one of those guys instead of the tyrant. Once he goes down, a Doom Hunter spawns in on the side of the map, and once you take him out, the fight will be over, but I just take a moment to stack up before going and dealing with him. These guys are even easier than before. Now we have 2 blood punches. You could just do a double blood punch, and they'll go down almost immediately while frozen. You can also just do the single blood punch and SSG follow-up as well that we have been doing, but the double blood punch is just another fast way of taking them out. Once you're done here, we'll progress towards the next fight, which can be made pretty easy using a D-blade since it is on the interior of a building, so it's a pretty cramped space. Get here however you will. I messed up the jump here and had to redo it. I normally just skip all this with a yeet hook, but I wanted to spawn in the demons that doing that would skip. That way, if you guys spawn them in, you see how to deal with them. That being said, if you see the current like Mancubus and those demons there, they won't spawn in if you just fly directly here without using the climbable walls. So I go ahead and just take out these guys, and then I start moving up to set up for the D-Blade. All you have to do is jump to the end of the room, do a freeze or a frag to stun things, and then just fire off the D-Blade to finish off the fight. Sometimes a couple of guys will survive, so just do what you need to do to take them out. Just be wary of the Pinky and make sure you have a stagger lined up for him, or you can just blood punch him. And with this fight done, we can go ahead and move on to the next. You'll also see I've picked up a triple chainsaw, but if you're able to do that you can, but you definitely don't have to. It's not the end of the world anyways. This area you could just run past all of it, but I'll stay here and fight the demons just so that you see what there is in case you need to do that for whatever reason. But there's literally nothing stopping you from just jumping past them and running out the window. Once you get in here, we're going to go towards the BFG shot and fire it out of the window here. Once we do that, we're going to run this way, and we're going to take down the buff totem in this area. You'll see I almost forgot to, because normally you don't do it in the speedrun because you don't have to do it, but obviously for safety reasons you could just take out the buff totem and then head up here. Once you walk up, the wall will disintegrate, and then you're going to want to run past the crowd up here. Although I did just hit a little chainsaw there just so I could have some ammo because I was running low. Making use of your meat hook, the ballista, and the energy shield, you can get past this fight pretty quickly, and it's nice to be able to run past it, but if you really wanted to fight it, a D-Blade would do wonders. Once you get out here, I don't know why I'm fighting this because you're supposed to just fire the BFG up into the sky, but eventually I remember what you're supposed to do and end up just accidentally direct hitting the Kako and having to fight this fight. All you have to do is fire the BFG off into the sky and it will kill literally everything and spawn the Marauder. So normally you would be done with this room, but because I messed it up, I have some more stuff to deal with here. So I'll just be cleaning that up, and I'll just let you guys see it so that you could see some more endgame gameplay on DoomEternal. So now we're getting into the last little stretch before the final fight. This is going to be yet another room that we use a BFG on, and we're going to use a bunch of Crucible charges in this room as well. You'll want to make sure that you have at least 2. Pretty much you just want to fly in here as fast as you can, grab the BFG, and immediately shoot it out the window. While it's flying, you'll want to take care of the Tyrant as well. Then you're going to immediately turn and move towards the next Tyrant spawn over here. You can Crucible him down. Now a buff totem is going to spawn, and we're going to go towards the next guy. I recommend doing something to stagger him so that he doesn't hit you. You're going to Crucible him. Then we're going to go up the grab lift here to the side and make our way towards the buff totem on the other side of the room. I know that this is like super fast and it just seems like it'd be really scary to execute, but once you practice it once or twice, it's extremely consistent and it is by far the easiest way to get through this room. If you take things slowly, the demons all move out of position and they bunch up and start causing you problems. But once you take down the buff totem, you have the freedom to just do whatever you want and take your time. So instead of sitting up there like I was, you could just run out and then make use of your space like you should be when you're playing safely. Sometimes I don't follow those instructions very well just because as a speedrunner, I'm most of the time just able to kill the demons before they cause problems. But obviously I'm trying to demonstrate a safe playthrough, so I'm doing my best to show that off when I can, but sometimes I forget because it's just not my instinct to do it. Once this fight's done, there is a little trigger skip you can hit so that you don't spawn in a couple of demons in the transition here, but if you mess it up, you can just run past them anyway. Pretty much you just do a little ballista boost off of the wall jump there, climb up here, and we have another BFG shot to use. For this one, what we want to do is get to a position where we can fire it out of the opening in the building, and this is going to kill off all the regular demons in the area and spawn in a Marauder up where this BFG shot spawns. Once you take care of the Marauder, you're then going to have an Archvile after that, so make sure you're ready to go after him directly after. With the Marauder down, you can stack up anything you need, do a chainsaw if you need it, but you don't want to spend too much time as the Archvile can start spawning stuff in. This is the only place where the Archvile spawns, so it's easy to tell where he's going to be. Just take him out with the freeze and double lock-on burst combo just like any other. With him down, the fight is now over, you'll have a cutscene, and at this point we're ready to just move on to the last fight of the game. So you got this last little battlefield where the demons are kind of infighting each other before you go, and honestly I recommend just running past it. You can stop and kill them all if you want to, but they're not that dangerous and a lot of them are actually focused on each other instead of you, so it's not too hard to just run past. Obviously, if you end up taking up a bunch of damage, you should stack up before going into the fight, and at that point you'd probably be better off just stopping and clearing it. You should also have one BFG shot before this point left over, and we'll be able to pick up a second one before going into the fight with the Icon of Sin. So this fight should be very easy because the BFG route gives you a ton of BFG shots. On this first phase, he'll actually be very heavily stun locked if you just take out his parts very quickly. So you'll see right away I go for the tummy and the head. The tummy is kind of hard to hit, and the head actually has more health, so the BFG shot makes very good sense on that. Then we have one more BFG shot that we can actually use before carrying over the max into the next fight. So I just pop a couple more arms so that way he's locked in some more animations while I go around and grab some additional BFG ammo. This first phase is actually really easy. The second phase of the fight is a bit harder than this, but since he doesn't get to do very many attacks as long as you have him animation locked, it's not too bad. Bear in mind that the Crucible is going to be infinitely recharging during this fight, so you can Crucible literally every scary enemy in the fight that he spawns in, and I would recommend doing that to hold on to your ammo for the Icon of Sin. PB and SSG or PB and Ballista combos are typically the best against him, but you can also use the rocket if he's standing in a spot where the rocket will hit him. Anyway, this fight goes down super fast, and all you have to do is practice it a couple of times and you'll literally never die on this boss. It's not a hard one. Just make sure you grab all the BFG ammo, stack up everything you can before going into the next fight, and remember there is a mega health at the top of the arena that you can grab if you need it, which I showed for a little bit there before I hopped down and went for this chainsaw. At this point, my Icon of Sin is stuck in a bunch of animations, but I'm just waiting for him to be done now. And during this time, you could still be hit by the regular enemies, so you'll want to watch out for them. You can make use of stuff like the energy shield or chainsaw animations to just be immune as much as possible. Also, keep in mind that you'll get random heavy enemy spawns here. In my case, I was getting Pain Elementals and Cacos for some reason, but sometimes you'll get stuff like Barons or Cybermancubi if you're unlucky, and he can also spawn in carcasses which can block your shots, so just make sure that you're being watchful for that as well. But now, his last armor piece is broken, and we're ready to run into the second phase of the fight. And this one, like I said, is a little bit scarier, because popping his pieces doesn't cause him to get locked in animations anymore, so he will actually be doing attacks throughout the entire fight. But the order for taking him down is exactly the same. You just do a tummy and a headshot, or screw them up like I did and just take out both of his chest shots somehow, but just go for all the BFG hits that you can to take down all of his pieces. You're given 5 BFG shots for this, as long as you're following the route that I used, so you should have more than enough to take him down really quickly just like I am here. If you want to be extra safe, you can actually stagger out the BFG shots a little bit. That way they're also killing off all the heavy demons whenever you're firing them with the tendrils before it hits him. But you can also just use the Crucible on any scary demons, and so it's not really that big of a deal if you want to just get all the BFG shots out of the way early like I am. It's worth noting that both of the chest spots, the head and the tummy, are the easiest to BFG, and then the hands and arms are the hardest ones to hit with the BFG. So I recommend making use of that and just using your combos on the arms and hands, and then using the BFG on the chest and head. But at this point, I'm just going to let the fight play out so that you guys can see how I handle the different attacks, how I actually handle getting brought down to low health and recovering, and just generally what kind of stuff happens during this fight. Oh yeah, one more thing is that if you feel like he's about to do a slam attack with his arm, that attack does like 150 damage or something completely absurd. And basically anytime it hits you, it's just going to immediately health gate you, which just means that you're brought down to very low health, but protected from being one-shotted as long as you have enough health in your health bar. So if he's ever doing that, pull out your chain gun and start blocking. That's exactly what I do. You can see he does it, and I block it. Even if you don't think it's going to hit you, it has a ridiculous radius, and it's probably one of the scarier attacks. And that's it, that's the end of the run, and at this point, once you skip past this, you'll actually get the little pop-up that shows you that you got the gold armor, and that you completed Ultra Nightmare. If you guys enjoy this and you made it all the way to the end, I would appreciate if you guys liked and subscribed. I plan on doing a video like this one for Dark Ages once it comes out and I can create an effective route for it, and I will also be live streaming the early access to Doom the Dark Ages, as I did get the premium version of it. If you do look at my channel, you'll see I have a lot of Destiny stuff on it right now. but I'm trying to transfer into doing some more variety content and not just being stuck on one game in specific. So if you didn't know, YouTube doesn't really look very kindly on people trying to change their content, and the algorithm tends to be very mean to you, so any support that you leave would be very much appreciated. That's all I got though. I'll see you guys later.